Chapter 556, The Fourth Killing Formation. Chapter 556, The Fourth Killing Formation. Reverie _. The killing formation was activated, and an extraordinary image arose, forming a terrifying, great danger. After Ling Han returned to the city, he smiled at Xuanyuan Ziguang and said, "What? Why are you following me? Come, come, come. Let's fight for 300 rounds." He assumed a fighting stance, ready to give it all. Xuanyuan Ziguang was almost angered to death. "You freaking guarded the city gate, only to say, fight for 300 rounds. Could there be such a cheap person? Not to mention 300 rounds. If he was only stopped shortly, he would be killed by the killing formation right away. I'll come collect this debt from you in the future," he said in a grave voice, turning into an arrow and charging at the city gate. Ling Han originally wanted to mess with him, but feeling several formidable and terrifying mental spirits, he gave up on the idea. True elites had come, and definitely wouldn't sit idly as he killed Xuanyuan Ziguang craftily. How unfortunate. He'd still wanted to make the other party suffer. Wang, Million Treasure City's great formation was also completely activated, and a white flash of light covered the city's skies like an eggshell. In reality, unseen beneath the ground was another half of an eggshell, guarding this ancient city from all directions with 0 blind spots. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion really wasn't short on the money at all. While this defensive formation was first-rate, it was also terrifying when it burned origin crystals. Hong, black swords 100 m long formed within the killing formation, emitting a shockingly cold glare. Even though several heaven-tier elites were already at the top of the city, they all felt a chill within facing against the black swords. It couldn't be blocked. Those black swords were like completely activated spirit tools, and heaven-tier elites would definitely be killed instantly if they stepped near them. The black sword slashed past. Fortunately, the city's great formation had been activated, turning into a shield that blocked the black sword. Hong, vein-like patterns intertwined and shone, turning into countless fragments that scattered down from the sky. Thankfully, it was blocked. Everyone was greatly shocked. Which force insisted on targeting Million Treasures City? No matter whether it was Spirit Treasures Pavilion or Alchemist Society, they were harmonious in bringing wealth and were of status above the norm, never making enemies of any force. So why would they attract someone using such a killing formation? Could this be the fourth killing formation? An old fogey cried out. The fourth killing formation? Most people were at a loss. Killing formations are formed naturally by the world. There is a total of 10 kinds of them. Though ranked one after another, their powers are actually not much different, and according to legends, they could even kill shattering void-tier elites. As for the first killing formation, it's the world's first unbreakable formation, claimed to be able to kill gods. The old fogey explained. What? Hearing those words, everyone's expressions changed drastically. What could be done? The fourth killing formation surrounded the city. Could Million Treasure City's defensive formation rival it? Moreover, even shattering void-tier warriors could be killed. Once the city's defense broke, they would all die inevitably. Who was it to be so deranged? Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth and observed continuously, comparing as he said, the fourth killing formation isn't complete, and one shattering void-tier elite can probably break it. Boy, what do you know? Who the hell are you? The adults are talking. Kids screw off to the side. Once he spoke, it instantly aroused many people's dissatisfaction. These people were all self-assured in their experience, even flaunting their identities in a situation like this. However, there were also people who kept an open mind and revealed a hint of cheerfulness. It was rumored that Spirit Treasures Pavilion had a shattering void-tier big shot keeping watch, and if he took the field, wouldn't he be able to break through the formation? With this little friend's words, this old man suddenly feels the same. It suddenly occurred to the old fogey earlier. Otherwise, this city's great formation couldn't possibly block the fourth killing formation. This was a naturally formed killing formation, something extremely terrifying. Only the other 8 killing formations could rival it. As for the first killing formation, it could kill gods, so even the other 9 killing formations added together were inferior to it. If only Ling Han said so, obviously no one would believe it. The words of the lowly carried little weight. However, being confirmed by the old fogey, more people instantly believed those words, which also greatly increased their confidence. Please request the senior of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion to intervene and break through this killing formation. That's right. Only that supreme being can do it. Everyone said one after another. Although they had no right at all to request a shattering void tier elite to act, it greatly concerned their lives, so they could only muster up the courage to say so. Otherwise, there would only be the road that led to death ahead of them. A figure flashed by. It was shockingly the damned fatso, in Xuanyuan. He looked outside the city as another black-colored spear formed, launching a second attack. He frowned and said, "Several pavilion masters have left Million Treasure City to visit other places." "The Grand Pavilion Master also left?" everyone cried out. "He left." In Xuanyuan sighed. "Now, this pavilion only has me, the only pavilion master keeping watch." Everyone was depressed. Heaven-tier elites couldn't break through the fourth killing formation even if it was an incomplete one. Pray that the great formation guarding the city is strong enough, guarding till those seniors return. Everyone could only hope so. Ling Han, however, was curious. Those pavilion masters of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion actually all left the city. Moreover, at the same time, being able to move 8 pavilion masters together, could it be that an extraordinary historic site had been discovered? In Xuanyuan shook his head and said, "The 8 pavilion masters won't possibly return in near time. Probably, 1 to 2 years would still be difficult." What, that long? Everyone's faces turned pale. 1 to 2 years? Could this great defensive formation be maintained for 1 to 2 years? Million Treasure City is an important land of Middle State. With communications cut off for a long time, people will definitely realize that something is wrong and run over to see exactly what's going on, someone said, filled with hope. However, can we really endure till that time? Someone said pessimistically. Hong, Hong, Hong. The fourth killing formation kept bombarding Million Treasure City. The great city-guarding formation formed a shield to protect it, but it wouldn't stand such crazy bombardment for long. Soon, cracks appeared on this shield, which shattered with a bang in the end. The great city-guarding formation formed a second shield, and continued to withstand the fourth killing formation's bombardment. In the short term, the defensive power could completely keep up with the destructive power, reaching a balance. The city's protection wouldn't be broken through. The problem was that the great city-guarding formation was activated by origin crystals, and under such high expenditure, how long could it be maintained? After In Xuanyuan and a big shot of the Alchemist Society discussed shortly, they arrived at a conclusion. It could endure for half a year, and if the other forces took out their origin crystals as support, then it would last even longer. At such a time, no one dared to be selfish. Everyone contributed their origin crystals one after another, hoping that the great formation could persist until reinforcements arrived. "Where are the experts of the Alchemist Society?" someone asked. Right, although alchemists primarily refined pills, the Alchemist Society's headquarters were here, so they hired a few elites to keep watch. Perhaps there might be a shattering void-tier super elite there. The 2 heaven-grade alchemists left the city long ago with their heaven-tier followers, an alchemist said. His status was considerably high as he was a high-level Earth-grade alchemist. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion and the Alchemist Society left at the same time, but Million Treasure City suffered the surrounding attacks of the fourth killing formation. This wasn't a coincidence, no matter how one looked at it. Chapter 557, Dilemma. Chapter 557, Dilemma. Reverie _ Could the Spirit Treasures Pavilion and the Alchemist Society have joined hands to conspire to murder us? Someone with persecutory delusion cried out. In Xuanyuan sneered and said, "To kill a dreg like you, would they need to take such a roundabout way? This lord can crush you 10,000 times." This certainly stood to reason, making many agitated people calm down. The key was that the Spirit Treasures Pavilion and the Alchemist Society had no reason to do so. The 8 pavilion masters of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion and the 2 heaven-grade alchemists of the Alchemist Society, as well as the heaven-tier elites, did they go to a certain historic site? Ling Han suddenly asked. Xuanyuan looked at Ling Han again, revealing an astounded look. Although this youngster interrupted twice and seemed to have no manners, every word he said nailed the spot. He nodded and said, "That's right." The pavilion received news that Alchemy Emperor Ling Han's ancient tomb was discovered, and within it were treasures collected by the Alchemy Emperor in all his life. Everyone was in an uproar. The Ling Han 10,000 years ago was a legend, not only excelling in alchemy, but also at the pinnacle of martial arts. How much and how shocking would his wealth be? Thinking about it made people's eyes red with desire. Now that his ancient tomb was discovered, could you say that you would hold back and not intervene? Ling Han's expression, however, was strange. A ghost? In his previous life, his flesh was shocked into ash by the Black Tower during an expedition. There couldn't be an ancient tomb where he was buried. This was clearly a trap to draw out the elites of Million Treasure City and take advantage of it to surround the city. Concocting such a great conspiracy just to kill them, the useless troops? Even though there were still Xuanyuan and other Heaven-tier elites here, setting up the fourth killing formation just to kill a few Heaven-tier warriors, this was obviously not worth it. No, no, no. There had to be a greater scheme, just that he hadn't thought of it. By the looks of it now, this is a scheme of luring the tiger out of the mountains. Hopefully, the pavilion masters and the two grandmasters can return safely. Xuanyuan sighed. He obviously knew that things were too coincidental, and there definitely was a bait. The enemy hidden in the dark deliberately planned such a large scheme, so presumably, reinforcements wouldn't come in the near time. We can only rely on ourselves now. Xuanyuan cupped his fists and said, "Please, old brothers and sisters, be generous and help small Yang guard Million Treasure City. Million Treasure City is our home too. We ought to do everything in our power." A voice floated over from within the city, extremely old but also filled with power and influence, making many people's thighs shiver as they were unable to stand firmly on their feet. "Small Yang, when it's necessary to intervene, we won't stand by idly." This was an old lady's voice, which was surprisingly like tough iron. After hearing her words, many people cried out with ears leaking blood, unable to withstand such oppressive might. "Yes." A third voice sounded, but it was a simple answer. These were the few Heaven-tier forces in the city. Of course, this was also because of Million Treasure City's singularity, or else no city in the Middle State would have Heaven-tier warriors keeping watch. Xuanyuan couldn't help but feel relieved. There were pathetically little shattering Void-tier elites in the world, and Heaven-tier ones were rare enough. Now, there were 4 Heaven-tiers joining hands, obviously making him much more confident. Moreover, the mysterious enemy used the fourth killing formation to entrap them. Didn't this explain that the opponent didn't have power equal to shattering Void tier? Otherwise, even the 4 in the Heaven tier wouldn't block it. No. Thinking so, his had slightly even more confidence. Ling Han took it all in his eyes, but shook his head. The hidden force definitely had shattering Void tier elites, or else why would they act so extremely daringly? Moreover, without the power of shattering Void tier warriors, how could they have set up the fourth killing formation? The opponent's shattering Void tier powerhouse was probably pinning down the Grand Pavilion Master of Spirit Treasures Pavilion, making him unable to get back in time. Anyway, Million Treasure City currently was certainly in imminent danger. Hong, Long, Long. The fourth killing formation kept operating as black swords, black sabers, black spears, and all other sorts of weapons appeared, bombarding the Great City Guarding Formation. The Great City Guarding Formation only formed a shield in opposition, simple yet effective. The day passed with people overwhelmed in anxiety. When everyone raised their heads to look at the sky on the next day, they were all shocked. Yesterday, the fourth killing formation only prompted weapons to bombard the Great City Guarding Formation one at a time, but today, there were 2 weapons. This created 2 times the destructive power, and obviously caused the expenditure of twice as many origin crystals. The only thing that set people's mind to rest was that the Great City Guarding Formation could still last. Originally, the condensed shield could withstand 10 hits before shattering, but now it shattered with 5 hits. As long as it didn't shatter with 1 hit, Then there was no need to worry about the city gates being broken through and the killing formation's menace's direct arrival. Everyone's expression was grave. Yesterday was 1 attack, and today was 2. So would it become 3 tomorrow, and the day after 4? Increasing continuously at this rate, the great city-guarding formation's defensive limit would be reached. As expected of the 4th killing formation, Ling Han also looked cautious. If he didn't have the Black Tower, he would just tear apart the instant teleportation talisman and run since he couldn't save others anyway. However, he now had the ability to save everyone in the city, and if he chose to only protect himself, an insurmountable threshold would be left in his heart. Saving people was as easy as lifting a hand for him, but this would expose the secret that he possessed the Black Tower. At that time, how many people would target him? Wait, my true self has already been targeted by countless people anyway. So what if I expose that I possess a spatial spirit tool that can accommodate living things? Ling Han thought the other way around. A spatial spirit tool that could accommodate living things and the Black Tower, these were 2 different matters. As for the people stored in the Black Tower, he would make them lose their senses, not letting them know where they went during this time. All right, if it comes to the moment of disaster, I'll appear with my original face, storing everyone into the Black Tower, then leave with the instant teleportation talisman. Ling Han made up his mind. With his thoughts clear, his mood instantly turned cheerful. On the 3rd day, the thing everyone worried about happened. The 4th killing formation formed 3 weapons at a time, firing at Million Treasure City. Now, the shield formed by the great city-guarding formation exploded in only 3 hits. The atmosphere within the city was stifling, and public order began to go out of control. At night, several vicious incidents happened. There were robberies, murders, and rape on women. Under the Armageddon-like inhibition, the beastly nature in many people's hearts was unleashed. If they were to die, why not do whatever they pleased before dying? The city became more and more chaotic as more people joined in for such wild pleasures. At first, it was only normal people, and afterwards, some lowly martial artists also joined the line of criminals, making the calamity even scarier. At this rate, the 4th killing formation didn't need to break through the city. Million Treasure City would bring about its own destruction. The city's powerful forces joined hands to enforce the law, killing many evildoers. The chaotic situation finally returned under control. Fortunately, on the 5th day, the 4th killing formation didn't form 5 weapons, stopping at 4 at a time. Everyone felt slightly at ease. Chapter 558, The 1,000 Corpse Sect Assaults. Chapter 558, The 1,000 Corpse Sect Assaults. Reverie _ Even though there were only 4 weapons attacking simultaneously, this was still very terrifying. The shield formed by the great city-guarding formation could only block 2 attacks before shattering. The consumption of origin crystals became an astronomical figure. Even if the Spirit Treasures Pavilion and the Alchemist Society were very wealthy, they could only endure a month of such expenditure. 1 month later, what would they do? The 10th day came. Someone's here. At the east side of the city, the news spread, and everyone came to the east side of the city like a swarm of bees. They ascended onto the city walls and saw 10 young males and females standing out east the city. Behind them was a crooked old man, whose eyebrows were all white. Who are you people? Why trap us in here? What exactly do you guys plan on doing? Everyone shouted one after another. The 11 people didn't seem to have come here mistakenly no matter how it looked. Xuanyuan also came to the city's edge, and as he looked at the old man at the bottom, his expression turned stern. He couldn't see through him. This person was definitely in the heaven tier, and his cultivation wasn't below his. The 11 people in the distance were indifferent. They had no intention of replying, appearing quite arrogant. May I ask how we might have committed an offense, making you guys open such a killing formation to trap us? Xuanyuan asked. This was a heaven tier elite, the old man finally said. In Million Treasure City, there's something that my sect must obtain, but we don't know where it is. Finding it will inevitably alert people, so might as well besiege this place and kill everyone. Then, there wouldn't be anyone in the way. It was actually for such a reason? Because they feared others might get in their way, they had set up a killing formation to completely slaughter a city. Could they be more deranged and perverse? After everyone heard, they instantly hurled all kinds of abuse. However, some people thought that to make such a force unsparing and unleashing the fourth killing formation to besiege an important place like Million Treasure City, the thing they sought had to be quite precious. No. For this force to do so, it was equivalent to making all the vast lands its enemy. It wasn't like the 8 pavilion masters of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion and the 2 heaven-grade alchemists of the Alchemist Society would never return would they let the matter go after they found out. Only in terms of size, the combination of Spirit Treasures Pavilion and Alchemist Society was probably the most powerful existence in the vast lands, right? To gravely offend such forces just like that, it was enough to prove just how precious that thing was. Oh, what is it? Why don't you guys let us find it and remove the fourth killing formation in return? Xuanyuan said, smiling. Although he was a great expert, the blood of a merchant flowed within him, so it was naturally a habit to bargain. Hee, no need to bother. We still hope to acquire it by ourselves. Moreover, our sect likes this place quite a lot, and plan on turning this place into our sect's main base, the white-browed old man said. Oh, may I ask what this lord is called, and what your dear sect is called? Xuanyuan asked. The white-browed old man revealed a frightening smile, and said, this old man is surnamed by one, with a one-character name, Yuan too. As for our sect, you guys should have heard of it to some extent. Oh, then why not say it and let everyone admire a little? Xuanyuan shot back. No need to say, see for yourselves. Bai Yuan laughed grimly and waved his right hand. Hong, long, long. A strange voice sounded as 7 caskets suddenly slid out from the black mist as if they had legs, sliding all the way to his legs before stopping. The 1,000 Corpse Sect. Instantly, many people cried out at once. Gagaga 3. This sect will use Million Treasure City to tell the entire world that the 1,000 Corpse Sect is back again. Bai Yuan laughed loudly. Hearing his arrogant laughter, the people at the top of the city walls said nothing, feeling only an extremely oppressive atmosphere. The 1,000 Corpse Sect came back so brazenly and was going to destroy Million Treasure City, while they were the ones who were going to be used for ceremonial sacrifice. Ling Han shook his head inwardly. If the 1,000 Corpse Sect chose Million Treasure City as the location for their gates of revival, then the fourth killing formation would never be withdrawn. It would be 1,000 Corpse Sect's great mountain guarding formation. The 10 killing formations all had one thing in common. The killing formations formed by heaven and earth didn't need origin crystals to maintain the formation but needed to be set up. The power of heaven and earth would naturally pour in, forming a terrifying murderous calamity. Used as a sect-guarding formation, it would truly be the world's finest. Don't say that I didn't give you guys a chance to live. Bai Yuan laughed eerily. These 10 people are the sect master's 10 direct disciples. Now, they're here to choose followers, and those picked by the 10 masters can live on. The 10 young males and females were all lofty. What was surprising was that they clearly didn't have any fluctuations of corpse chi on their bodies, unlike Bai Yuan, whose figure was crooked and bound by corpse chi. A youngster in a green gown said, amongst those in the same age level, whoever can block 10 of my moves will qualify to be my follower. Haha, 7th junior brother actually said to have them block 10 moves. Could you have slacked off recently, falling behind in progression? A youngster in purple clothing said, smiling. Whoever can block 5 of my moves can become my follower. He obviously thought himself stronger in that there weren't many who could block 5 of his moves. These youngsters were certainly strong. All of them were in the Flower Blossom tier. A few were even in the high stage of the Flower Blossom tier, no weaker than Xuanyuan Ziguang. Humph! Rats scampering across the street dare to be so arrogant. Let me test you guys out. Jia Zhang already jumped down the city gates and said loftily, I'm not here to be your follower. Just that you guys are unpleasant to the eye, so I'm finding one to slaughter. Who wants to die? All right. On top of the city, many people instantly cheered. The 1,000 Corpse Sect trapped them with a killing formation, not only conspiring to take their lives, but also humiliating them. This obviously made many people's blood boil with indignation, simply wanting a grand battle. However, some people had other ideas because the current circumstances clearly favored the Thousand Corpse Sect of Finebird chose a good tree to nestle in. Just a second layer of the flower blossom tier. Who'll go? The 10 disciples of the Thousand Corpse Sect looked at each other, and finally looked at the youngster that had just turned 20. 17th junior brother, your tier is the lowest, so this won't be up to you. That youngster seemed somewhat shy, and walked out among everyone's jostles, facing against Zhang. Die! Zhang immediately attacked, reaching out with his right hand and turning it into a golden dragon claw that pressed towards the youngster. Hong! The dragon claw grew with the wind and turned into a terrifying 3-meter-long being. Vein-like patterns shone and drew in heaven and earth's spiritual chi. The claw enlarged once again, reaching 900 meters. Hong! The dragon claw pressed down as if a real dragon was truly drawn out to suppress the world. You have some strength? That youngster nodded and reached out to counterattack. As he reached out, the Thousand Corpse Sect's special characteristic was immediately displayed as a black-colored evil chi swirled and turned into a frightening skeleton, opening its mouth to bite at the dragon claw. Hong. Chapter 559. Corpse Soldiers Show Off Their Power. Chapter 559. Corpse Soldiers Show Off Their Power. Reverie _ The two battled fiercely. From the circumstances, it was very hard to tell who was better right away. On top of the city walls, everyone was excited. The Thousand Corpse Sect boasted greatly, but in the end, they were nothing more than this. Although Zhang was one of the 5 dragons, he definitely couldn't enter top 100 amongst the younger generation in the middle state. Only Xuanyuan Ziguang, Yao Huiyu, and so on could represent the limits of the prodigies of the younger generation. Nevertheless, the Thousand Corpse Sect was a great ancient sect, yet the disciples they fostered were nothing more than this. It seemed that it had been too long, so their sect had waned. If it weren't for the 4th killing formation, they definitely wouldn't stand a single blow. Ling Han, however, shook his head and said, Zhang has lost. His voice wasn't low. It was heard by many people on the side, and they couldn't help but be furious. Hey, which side are you on? Why would you hope for Zhang's defeat? Could he be the Thousand Corpse Sect spy? I think he's suspicious. These people all stared at Ling Han, their gazes unfriendly. Zhu Xian was smart, immediately understanding what Ling Han meant. She said, he's the Thousand Corpse Sect's disciple, and Thousand Corpse Sect's true battle prowess lies in corpse soldiers. Hearing Zhu Xian's explanation, everyone instantly came to the same realization. Right. Why was the Thousand Corpse Sect notorious and spurned by the people of the world, and even destroyed several millennia ago? It was precisely because they refined corpse soldiers. Where did corpse soldiers come from? They came from the martial artists they killed, and the elite warriors' corpses stolen from cemeteries. Without corpse soldiers, the Thousand Corpse Sect would be a second-tier sect, but with them, it could be compared to powerful forces like the Heaven Sword Sect and the Cloud Phoenix Sect, and even go further beyond. Now, that youngster rivaled Zhang with his personal battle prowess, so when he unleashed his corpse soldiers, what would the outcome of the battle be? Ling Han said Zhang already lost, and definitely didn't say it without thinking. He wasn't on the Thousand Corpse Sect side, but simply told the truth based on the facts. However, Zhang, who was the one involved, didn't realize at all. He still battled with the youngster fiercely, and as the two were well matched in strength, he was also fully enjoying himself. Being oppressed in the city for 10 days made him extremely out of sorts, and he just happened to need a great battle to vent some anger. 17th junior brother, why aren't you done yet? Too slow. That's right. What month and year will this fight go on until? The 9 youngsters of the Thousand Corpse Sect all began to shout. That youngster revealed a fierce and savage smile and said, since the senior brothers and sisters are impatient, this little brother will end this battle as soon as possible. He let out a battle cry, and his ear-piercing sounds came from afar, for caskets slid over. The 1,000-corpse sect's people fostered corpses, and the stronger they were, the more corpse soldiers they could foster. He was in the flower blossom tier, and could at most foster 6 corpse soldiers, but this demanded too much, for was already his limit. Meanwhile, normal flower blossom tier disciples could only foster 2. One needed to separate a part of the divine sense to control the corpse soldiers, and the more divine sense was separated, the more it affected the body. Therefore, unless one had extraordinary talent, it was better to pursue the quality of corpse soldiers, and only then the quantity. "Go!" that youngster shouted lightly, and 4 corpse soldiers immediately leapt out their caskets. Each one was rotten with only the skeleton left, but their bones were refined into the color of shiny silver, as if it were made out of metal. 3rd-tier silver-armored corpse, equivalent to the flower blossom tier. That youngster stared at Ziguang and said, "You're too weak. You're not qualified to be a follower of Xiang." Bullsh. T. Ziguang was furious. Although he didn't want to be his opponent's follower at all, he couldn't bear the opponent's disdain. He let out a battle cry, and a mirror appeared in his hand. "Heptagold mirror!" he shouted loudly and moved the mirror. Instantly, a flash of golden light surged out, shining towards Ziguang. Ziguang faced it indifferently, not even bothering to parry or evade. A corpse soldier stepped forward to block the flash of golden light. With a hole instantly opened up on the corpse soldier's ribs, with gas flowing out. Impressive. The corpse soldier's physique couldn't be compared to same-tier rare metals, but it was still quite formidable. However, it was penetrated with one attack, serving to show how terrifying this spirit tool was. Ziguang didn't care at all. He pointed at Ziguang and said, "Kill him." Instantly, the 4 corpse soldiers were like fierce wolves and tigers, pouncing towards Ziguang. The 1,000-corpse sect was dreaded and hated by many large forces in the ancient times, which certainly stood to reason. It was not only because their actions were vile, but also because they were powerful. With regards to just personal battle prowess, Ziguang and Ziguang were equal, but once corpse soldiers were out, their battle prowess wasn't on the same level at all anymore. The 4 corpse soldiers were in the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier. Refined hundreds of times, their physique was tough, and they did not fear death nor pain. They were literally human-shaped weapons, in which flower blossom tier cultivator wouldn't get scared seeing them. Ziguang already unleashed that heptagold mirror, and his battle prowess skyrocketed a whole lot, but against the 4 corpse soldiers, he was really backed up, completely unable to cope. Weak, truly too weak. The 10 disciples of 1,000-corpse sect all shook their heads, appearing as if he were beneath contempt. On the top of the city wall, everyone was silent. Ziguang wasn't really weak. He was at the 2nd layer of the flower blossom tier, but his personal battle prowess reached 7 stars, and after unleashing the heptagold mirror, his battle prowess skyrocketed to 10 stars. It couldn't be helped that his opponents were too strong and too many. For corpse soldiers were all at the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier in terms of battle prowess, neither fearing death nor pain, with tough defense. Nothing could be done. He was very soon in imminent danger, and would definitely be killed within 10 moves. "Enough," Xuanyuan said in a deep voice. Bai Yuan laughed gently and said, "Juniors are sparring, and the older generation shouldn't meddle." This lord said, "Stop." Xuanyuan roared, and his voice turned into waves that rolled towards the opposing side. This was a heaven-tier warrior's furious roar. If hit by the sound waves, it was guaranteed that those at the flower blossom tier would instantly faint. "Damned fatso, you're too pushy." Bai Yuan attacked, and a deathly mist was waved out, blocking Xuanyuan's sound waves. "Ah!" Ziguang let out a tragic scream. His arms and legs were grabbed separately by 4 corpse soldiers, and with a pull, he was torn into pieces. He had no iron sheet body, and having his limbs grabbed and pulled, he obviously died. 17th junior brother, why'd you dismember him? Wouldn't it be better to leave a complete body to refine a corpse soldier? Someone said with a laugh. Ziguang laughed and said, "A small fry at the 2nd layer of the flower blossom tier refined into a corpse soldier would have limited strength. Moreover, He can still be refined into a corpse soldier even after being dismembered, just that a bit more effort is necessary. Who wants to battle? He looked at the people on the city wall, wearing an expression of disdain. How truly arrogant. However, Jia Zhang's strength was already quite good. Yet he was swiftly defeated at the hands of this person. This guy certainly had the ability to be proud. At least, those who had the same battle prowess as Jia Zhang were not qualified to take up the challenge, or else they'd just be giving up their lives. Chapter 560, West Regions Pang Xiang Ming. Chapter 560, West Regions Pang Xiang Ming. Reverie _ Hee. I heard that the Spirit Treasures Pavilion held a once in 3 or 5 year competition, and one of the competition rounds was martial arts. Are there really no other decent opponents? Si Yao continued to ridicule the crowd. Everyone was unconvinced. Although Si Yao won, it still didn't change their fate of being trapped, and since they were trapped and humiliated, they felt even worse. I'll battle you. A hot-headed young man leapt down, yet he was just a nobody that didn't even enter the flower blossom tier. Without even getting close, he was bitten to death by a corpse soldier, his blood splattering all over the ground. Si Yao played with the heptagold mirror that used to belong to Jia Zhang, and smiled as he said, although that guy was pathetically weak, this spirit tool is really quite good, posing a threat to even peak stage flower blossom tier warriors. Give back the treasure mirror. Someone leapt down the city walls and yelled at Si Yao. It was a 40-years-old man, who emitted an unfathomably deep presence. Humph, already at such an age. Don't butt in. Bai Yuan intervened, and swatted towards that person with a palm. Xuanyuan hurriedly intervened to save that person. Pong, with a loud bang, Bai Yuan's attack was neutralized. That middle-aged man's face turned pale, and he hurriedly ran back. He was Jia family's spiritual infant tier elite. He originally wanted to retrieve the treasure, yet almost gave up his life doing so. Hee. Bai Yuan laughed. This old man will give you guys a chance. Those under 30 years of age can take the field to spar with these 10 small guys. Each person can participate in at most 10 fights, and with each win, this old man can let 10 people leave this city. Xuanyuan immediately sneered and said, Can your nonsense be trusted? Hee. Then this old man will make an oath, Bai Yuan said, and raised his hand to make an oath as expected. Gods lay 3 feet above one's head. Now oaths couldn't be recklessly made. Everyone instantly revealed an impulsive look. Winning one battle, they could receive 10 quotas to leave the city, and if they won a few battles, they could even bring their entire family out of this killing formation. I'll battle you. Someone immediately jumped out and attacked Si Yao. Court death. Si Yao sneered as 4 corpse soldiers demonstrated their power, instantly dismembering that person. Give us a decent opponent, or else there's no need to make such a bet, a disciple of the 1,000 Corpse Sect said, revealing an impatient look. I'm not interested in killing ants. Atop the city gates, the youngsters looked at each other, revealing their burning fury. Quite arrogant, huh? A youngster in a blue long garment said dully. His figure was lanky, and he had a moon-shaped mark on his forehead, flashing indistinctly. He stood amongst the crowd, unprepossessing, but once he spoke, his presence rose infinitely, instantly turning into a resplendent star from a passerby. Xiao, he leapt down and stood at the city gates. This opponent's not bad. With a glance, Si Yao revealed a joyful look. This follower's mine. The youngster in the blue raised his right hand. A silver bell was actually fastened to his wrist, looking somewhat girly. He shook his hand, and instantly ding, ding, ding sounds echoed, beautiful and pleasant to listen to. He looked at Si Yao and said, I'm about to win, and I don't need any quotas to leave the city. You can kneel on the ground and kowtow forcefully 3 times. Si Yao's expression changed drastically, and he said, Such arrogant manner. After I defeat you, I'll have you know what the pecking order is. The youngster in blue smiled slightly and said, Attack. I'll give you 3 moves. Arrogant. Si Yao snapped his finger. Charge. The 4 corpse soldiers immediately jumped out and attacked the youngster in blue garment. The youngster was extremely at ease, and as he pressed his right hand forward, the 4 corpse soldiers actually stopped all at once as if a freezing spell had been cast on them. "What?" everyone cried out. What was going on? Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth and instantly saw everything clearly. The 4 corpse soldiers actually had threads attached to them. It was precisely these threads that tied them tightly, rendering them unable to do anything. Ling Han thought it was blood-sucking origin gold at first, but examining closely, he discovered that it was actually formed by origin power. Origin power formed threads that could tie down people. What sort of mystic arts was this? The youngster in blue clothing pulled with hands again, and the 4 corpse soldiers were instantly like marionettes, moving involuntarily. However, their movements were rigid, and that look was truly amusing. However, no one was able to laugh, feeling frightened on the inside. Those were 4 corpse soldiers, which were comparable to warriors at the 9th layer of the Flower Blossom tier. Yet under the control of the young man, they were like marionettes. This was too ridiculous. Who is this guy? He seems really strong. Hiss, he's the One West Region's Spirit Treasures Pavilion asked to attend the martial arts contest. He seems to be called Pang Xiang. Right, he's called Pang Xiang. So powerful. Everyone cried out. Not many people could see that Pang Xiang used threads of origin power to constrain the 4 corpse soldiers, but it was precisely because they didn't know that they felt it incredible, taking him for a celestial. Ling Han also nodded. This skill was certainly effective, but Pang Xiang didn't appear that relaxed, either. After all, he was tying down 4 9th layer Flower Blossom tier corpse soldiers, while his cultivation was merely at the 5th layer of the Flower Blossom tier. This was also because he was freakish enough to fight a stronger opponent while being weaker, and even fight 1 against 4. However, this was also roughly his limit. Conversely, the 1,000 Corpse sect was truly freakish. A random disciple could rival the most outstanding geniuses of present age. Yao was also shocked at first, but his divine sense could be said to be connected with the 4 corpse soldiers, and he soon felt that the opponent's constraints were inadequate. Thus, he immediately laughed loudly. Ha ha ha, thought you were going to be quite formidable. Pong, 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 pong. As expected, the 4 corpse soldiers shook off the constraints, attacking Pang Xiang once again. Pang Xiang was fearless. As his hands danced, he appeared extremely effeminate, looking as if a girl reincarnated in the wrong body. As he raised his hands, he formed orchid-like shapes with his fingers, appearing extremely gentle. The 4 corpse soldiers couldn't approach at all as they got close. He would constrain them with his origin power and throw them out. Yao let out a battle cry and joined the fray. Corpses flood heaven and earth, he bellowed as corrosive black-colored corpse chi spewed out from his entire body. You think it'll work on me? Pang Xiang sneered and spread out an origin power shield to block out the corpse chi. He was at the 5th layer of the Flower Blossom tier, so his origin power was naturally much thicker than Yao's. The corpse chi couldn't possibly penetrate it. Yao laughed loudly and said, "This wasn't prepared for you." As the sound of his words fell, a blood-red ray shone from the eye sockets of the 4 corpse soldiers, emitting an even more violent presence. Pong, 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 pong. They suddenly broke the constraint of Pang Xiang's origin power threads, charging towards him. Pang Xiang frowned slightly. After absorbing corpse chi, the 4 corpse soldiers' strength increased explosively at least by 1 star of battle prowess. It made him feel a modicum of pressure. Chapter 561, Fighting for You. Chapter 561, Fighting for You. Reverie _ The 4 corpse soldiers charged up together at Pang Xiang. Each attack emitted an intense evil presence, just as if they were demons that climbed out of hell. From a certain sense, it certainly was so. Corpse soldiers and corpse chi were of the same origin. After the 4 corpse soldiers absorbed Yao's personal corpse chi, their strength instantly grew explosively. Yao, on the other hand, appeared somewhat dispirited, seeming to have expended a great deal. Just a few skeletons to deal with me? Pang Xiang sneered. The moon-shaped mark let out a great ray of light, while his hands danced, confining the 4 corpse soldiers once again. "Break!" he shouted loudly, and with a snap, the hands and legs of 2 corpse soldiers were pulled off. Such formidable power. After corpse soldiers were refined, their bodies were extremely tough, approaching the level of same-tier rare metals. As for how close it could get, it would depend on the refinement heat and ingredients added. The elite corpses were only slightly higher in grade. As for the original ingredients, being refined into a powerful corpse soldier, they naturally had a great price. C2 Yao's 4 corpse soldiers weren't extraordinary amongst the flower blossom tier beings, but being refined into 3rd-tier silver-armored corpse was already quite remarkable. Yet, Pang Xiangming instantly smashed 2 corpse soldiers, proof enough of Pang Xiangming's remarkableness. "Damn it!" C2 Yao roared, and the 4 corpse soldiers assaulted again. The corpse soldiers had no sense of pain anyway, so losing a hand and a leg only slightly affected their battle prowess. He also personally entered the battle, attacking Pang Xiangming with them. Pang Xiangming should be able to win, right? Zhu Xin Air asked Ling Han. Ling Han nodded and said, "If C2 Yao doesn't have any other trump cards, then Pang Xiangming's victory is assured." He made judgments on several occasions that already convinced and assured many people. Although almost no one knew Pang Xiangming, everyone was in the same boat, hoping that Pang Xiangming could emerge victorious. Some people simply wanted to regain some pride, while some thought that after Pang Xiangming won, there would be some spots to leave the city. Maybe they could get one from him. Originally, everyone was like a block of iron, willing to fight to the death for their survival, but once a feeble chance of survival appeared before them, quite a few people had a change of hearts. Pang Xiangming was better by a notch as expected, and after a few dozen moves, the 4 corpse soldiers were broken down. He also attacked C2 Yao with a heavy palm, but it didn't kill him. As a black-colored corpse chi swirled, C2 Yao retreated into the crowd and hacked out a mouthful of black blood, looking extremely feeble. "Haha, 17th junior brother, looks like you have no chance with this follower." A youngster in a black gown laughed loudly, taking large strides forward. He then said, "I'm Bian Hao, the 14th disciple under the Sect master." Pang Xiangming looked coldly at the youngster in black gown and said, "Move away. He still owes me 3 forceful kowtows." "Youngster, do you really not want the 10 quotas to leave the city?" Bai Yuan interrupted. "I don't." Pang Xiangming declined without hesitation. "SHT, you stupid." Atop the city, several people instantly cried out, "You don't want it? Then give it to me. Motherfuck, where did this fool come from? Actually willing to die here just to earn some respect. How extremely retarded." Ling Han, however, clapped and revealed a smile. This Pang Xiangming had quite a personality. He was worthy of saving. He looked coldly from the sidelines. Some people he planned to save, while some were only fit to turn into mire here. "Hee, since you're willing to give up 10 quotas, then that's your choice," Bai Yuan said with a smile. However, him kowtowing because you won is your own one-sided wish. He never agreed. How deceitful. But thinking it over, certainly, the bet of 3 kowtows was Pang Xiangming's unilateral statement. C2 Yao didn't agree, so a one-sided wish didn't work, right? Otherwise, with so many beauties in the world, if you liked one, couldn't you just bring one home? Pang Xiangming revealed a furious look, but didn't express his anger. He pointed coldly at Bian Hao and said, "Then I'll kill you." "Kill me? You're not qualified." Bian Hao laughed loudly. He had the cultivation of the 4th layer of the flower blossom tier, a layer higher than C2 Yao, but the 1,000 corpse sect still relied on corpse soldiers. How many corpse soldiers he possessed and how strong the corpse soldiers were was the key. G1, with a grazing sound, for caskets slid over. Pong, 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 pong. 4 corpse soldiers jumped out. They were obviously 3rd-tier silver-armored corpses. Unless they possessed 3 lives corpse casket, they couldn't control corpse soldiers with power beyond their own tier. This also showed the scariness of the 3 lives corpse casket. Pang Xiangming obviously wouldn't be afraid, charging towards Bian Hao. The 4 corpse soldiers intercepted him, waving their large skeletal hands and raising a terrifying strong wind. Apparently, these 4 corpse soldiers were stronger. I'm afraid they've reached 13 stars battle prowess. Ling Han nodded. So powerful. Zhu Xin cried out in surprise. After martial artists died, only the corpse remained. Even if it underwent refinement, being able to unleash battle prowess that corresponded to its own tier was quite remarkable, and to surpass star levels. The corpse was either really extraordinary when it was alive, or a great price was paid to refine it. No matter how it looked, Bian Hao's 4 corpse soldiers were truly strong and gradually suppressed Pang Xiangming, giving him no time to attack Bian Hao. Pong! A trace of blood oozed from Pang Xiangming's waist. Bian Hao wielded a dagger, fresh blood still dripping from it. He licked it with his tongue, revealing a bloodthirsty savageness. His sneak attack succeeded just now, striking Pang Xiangming. However, under such circumstances, it didn't really count as a sneak attack. The people of the 1,000 Corpse Sect were one with corpses, and it could only be said that the 4 corpse soldiers gave Pang Xiangming too much pressure, creating a chance for Bian Hao's attack to hit. Ha 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 ha. Bian Hao laughed loudly. You've already affected by my corpse poison, and you can only be saved by submitting to me. Otherwise, the corpse chi will slowly erode you, turning you into a bloodthirsty corpse soldier. Humph! Pang Xiangming ignored him and flew directly to the top of the city wall, slumping down. He took out a pill bottle from a spatial ring and poured out a few soybean-sized medicinal pills to take, beginning to execute an art to expel the corpse chi. Ignorance! Bian Hao sneered as he looked toward the city gates and said, "Who's still not convinced and wants to battle with me?" He was nothing more than the 14th disciple of 1,000 Corpse Sect's Sect Master. How could he be so arrogant? Everyone placed their gaze on Xuanyuan Ziguang. This youngster had outstanding and domineering might, having the momentum to surpass Yao Huiyu and other prodigies who had already made a name for themselves. Moreover, his cultivation of the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier was at the top of the younger generations. If he took the field, victory was definitely assured. Xuanyuan Ziguang revealed a proud look. He originally didn't want to take the field so soon. A genius like him should obviously intervene at the last moment, shining on the entire field. However, Million Treasure City had no other stronger youngsters, and if he didn't step up now, the enemy's challenge would soon be over. He smiled faintly at Hellion Sun Shui and said, "This battle, I'll fight it for you." Chapter 562, The Good Quality of Others. Chapter 562, The Good Quality of Others. Reverie _ Damn, he doesn't even forget to pick up girls when taking the field. The eyes of the young ladies nearby lit up in excitement as they cupped their hands and placed them in front of their chest, desperately yelling out Xuanyuan Ziguang's name, wishing they could throw themselves at him. Idiot! Ling Han shook his head. Idiot! Hellion Sun Shui imitated him while sticking her tongue out. After all, she had to add in some individual characteristic. Next time you meet this idiot, just beat him up, Ling Han encouraged. But I'm scared of hurting my hand, Hellion Sun Shui said weakly. Ling Han pondered, then took out the brick, shoving it into her hand, and said, "Then use this to smack him." Hellion Sun Shui was instantly elated, and said, "All right." She gripped the brick and tried out her strength in waving it, looking eager to give it a try. Xuanyuan Ziguang scored a rebuff, and his expression turned gloomy. No matter whether it was martial arts or relationships, he was successful in every endeavor, but now, he not only was unable to completely suppress Ling Han in martial arts, he also was unable to conquer Hellion Sun Shui, making him out of sorts. Emph! We'll see when I sweep clean these 1,000 Corpse Sect dregs and win over endless glory. Xuanyuan Ziguang leapt down. Looking loftily at Bian Hao, he said, "If you can block one move, I'll spare your life." How arrogant! Bian Hao possessed 4 corpse soldiers that reached 13 stars in battle prowess. Was this not enough to block Xuanyuan Ziguang's one move? Bian Hao obviously burst into anger. He was a personal disciple of the 1,000 Corpse Sect's Sect Master, proud and arrogant. However, someone actually looked down upon him, so how could be tolerated? He was just about to attack, but felt his shoulders sink. Someone held him back. It was Bai Yuan. "Venerable Bai, please let me battle," he said. Bai Yuan shook his head and said, "You're not his opponent. Let the third go." "What?" The disciples of the Thousand Corpse Sect all cried out. Although they weren't all here today, the third, in other words, the third disciple of Thousand Corpse Sect Master, Zhu Tiangu, was the strongest in their party. The strongest card was already going to be dealt now? Was the opponent that strong? Zhu Tiangu had been napping all this time. Now, he finally opened his eyes and stared at Xuanyuan Ziguang for a short while, revealing a bellicose expression, and said, "This person is a good opponent. I don't have the certainty to win." Bian Hao and the other disciples were shocked again. Even third senior brother said so. Was Xuanyuan Ziguang really that strong? Second senior brother should be able to win firmly, not to mention great senior brother, whose talents are peerless, such that all of us together aren't as good as him. Zhu Tiangu said with a smile. Bian Hao and the other disciples all nodded, firmly believing Zhu Tiangu's words. Every one of them were geniuses, but they still idolized their great senior brother, who knew just how strong this person was. Zhu Tiangu walked out in large strides. His stature was very tall, but he was very sturdy. At first glance, he looked somewhat like a youngster that cut firewood in the mountains. "Your corpse soldiers?" Xuanyuan Ziguang asked. "When I need to use them, they'll appear," Zhu Tiangu said indifferently. Xuanyuan Ziguang sneered and said, "Not using corpse soldiers, you'll be instantly killed." "Haha, if so, then I can only blame my inferior skills." Zhu Tiangu laughed loudly. When experts fight, they battled with their wits first before using their hands. Apparently, Xuanyuan Ziguang also didn't dare to underestimate Zhu Tiangu, or else he wouldn't need to provoke him with words, and simply just attack. Xuanyuan Ziguang placed one hand behind his back and said, "Since you're not using corpse soldiers, I'll let you face me without one of my hands." This arrogance. Zhu Tiangu revealed a hint of anger. The opponent wanted to force him to use corpse soldiers with just one hand? How confident could he be? He snorted, opened his mouth, and reached in with one hand, pulling out a black-colored longsword. What the hell? Everyone atop the city was shocked. You were really that poor that you didn't even have a spatial ring, hiding a sword inside your body? Ling Han, however, revealed an astounded look and muttered, "The legendary nurturing a tool with one's own body is real?" "What's nurturing a tool with one's own body?" Zhu Xian asked. She, like Ling Han, was also disguised, so she obviously didn't call herself Xian and Ling Han as Brother Han or Master Han. Nourishing a spirit tool within the body means to use one's own blood and qi to nourish the spirit tool constantly. This allows the spirit tool to become more powerful and even manifest a tool spirit, Ling Han said, but immediately shook his head and added, "No matter what spirit tool, the moment it's shaped, it exists for battle. As a vicious object, nourished within the body, it is extremely likely to kill oneself." Nourishing a tool with one's own body was a risk, but if one could stick it out, then the tool thus nourished would be extremely powerful. Atop the city wall, everyone listened to Ling Han's explanation, nodding repeatedly. Some people were also secretly guessing Ling Han's identity. He clearly looked 24 to 25 years old yet knew so much secret knowledge. His background was probably extremely remarkable. Xuanyuan Ziguang, however, revealed a curious look and said, "Nourishing a tool with one's own body? Hee, that's a first. Let me try it out." Zhu Tiangu held his sword in hand, and his listless expression was instantly swept clean, emitting a feverish battle intent as he shouted loudly, "As you wish." He pushed off fiercely and shot towards Xuanyuan Ziguang. As the black sword was brandished, 17 flashes of sword chi formed, tangling towards Xuanyuan Ziguang like whips. "Interesting," Xuanyuan Ziguang muttered, still with one hand behind his back. He flicked gently with his other hand, and a fire tiger appeared, biting at the sword chi. "What a joke. You want to neutralize my black demon sword?" Zhu Gutian sneered. "Can I not?" Xuanyuan Ziguang said arrogantly. That fire lion swelled up abruptly and became 10 m large, emitting a terrifying baleful presence. Condensing qi into ray. Bai Yuan gaze tightened. This youngster is truly remarkable, almost forming a ray, yet he intentionally suppressed it, obviously wanting to cultivate more flashes of qi. How truly bold and daring. Rays crushed qi in quality. At the time, when Rain Emperor cultivated Fist Ray, with the cultivation of the first layer of the Flower Blossom tier, he fought a 9th layer Flower Blossom tier warrior and a King tier demonic ape. It was clear how powerful rays were. This could increase the battle prowess of martial artist at the core, but Xuanyuan Ziguang suppressed the condensing of ray forcibly. On one hand, it showed his great martial arts talent, and on the other, his great ambition of not settling for 22 flashes of qi. In certain aspects, geniuses were all the same, existing for the sake of breaking the limits. This fire lion wasn't a flash of kit was condensed from 22 flashes of qi. However, it was different from the integratedness of a ray, but was more like a combination. Ling Han nodded. The good quality of others could help develop oneself. Xuanyuan Ziguang's thought process was very good, simulating qi into a ray. This way, he could continue to cultivate qi while increasing its power. Truly remarkable pioneering. Chapter 563, Victory. Chapter 563, Victory. Reverie _ Xuanyuan Ziguang and Zhu Tiangu carried out a fierce battle. Both of them held back, one only using one hand, and the other not using corpse soldiers. Apparently, if Xuanyuan Ziguang was forced to use 2 hands first, then he would be the one at a disadvantage. Conversely, if he could, with one hand, force Zhu Tiangu to use corpse soldiers, then he would have the advantage to a certain degree. Of course, this advantage wasn't much, because the 1,000 corpse sect's battle prowess mainly relied on corpse soldiers. If Xuanyuan Ziguang could only unleash 30% of his battle prowess with one hand, then Zhu Tiangu at most could unleash 20% of his battle prowess without using corpse soldiers. As expected, without battling for 10 rounds, Zhu Tiangu was forced to summon corpse soldiers. 5 corpse soldiers. Flower Blossom tier's limit was to control 6 corpses, and he reached 5. Despite it being only one more, when it was near the limit, this small advantage could be infinitely enlarged. 5 corpse soldiers were definitely stronger than 4, and not just by a bit. Xuanyuan Ziguang naturally didn't dare to be careless anymore, maneuvering both hands to battle against Zhu Tiangu and the 5 corpse soldiers. The outcome of the battle couldn't be decided in a short while, serving to show how terrifying these two youngsters were. The older generations can't even compare. The youngsters nowadays are truly terrifying. As expected, it's the prosperous time of martial arts. Exceptional talents from the younger generation keep emerging. Unless one was a prodigy of the same generation, one probably wouldn't be qualified to contend with these youngsters. Atop the city wall, quite a few people cried out, exclaiming at the power of Xuanyuan Ziguang and Zhu Tiangu. However, it should be rare for such powerful youngsters like them to appear. Yes, in the middle state, only Yao Huiyu, Ming Dai Wu, and some others that could be counted one's fingers have reached such heights. Definitely not beyond 10 people, a very experienced man concluded extremely surely, making everyone convinced as they nodded their heads ceaselessly. After Ling Han heard that, he couldn't help but laugh. He then said, "Hunyou, show them a little of what you've got." "Okay, I'll show them Nyo's awesomeness." Hunyou leapt down the city gates, placed her hands on her hips, and said, "Who wants to fight Nyo?" After the people of Thousand Corpse Sect looked at each other, they all laughed loudly. This was only a 6 to 7-year-old little girl that they could kill by extending a finger. If they were to attack this little girl, then that would be too shameful. They all ignored her and overlooked that Hunyou jumped down from the city wall, not walking out of it. However, Bai Yuan revealed an astounded look because he couldn't see through Hunyou's cultivation. If she truly was just an ordinary little lady, then how could she possibly jump down from such a high city gate and be all right? The youngsters were careless and overlooked it, but he wouldn't be. He was much more experienced compared to these youngsters. Living cautiously till now was the only secret to becoming a heaven-tier elitiso. He obviously wouldn't overlook it just because he'd become elderly. He pondered and said, Bien Hao, you go fight her. Venerable Bai. Me? Bien Hao felt wronged. Why did he have to go? This was truly just a little girl. Taking one step forward was already extremely embarrassing. Don't be careless, Bai Yuan warned. Bien Hao revealed an astounded expression. Hearing Venerable Bai's tone, it was as if this little girl was quite remarkable. He finally withdrew the reluctance within his heart, taking large strides forward, and said, Little girl, you want to fight me? Hunyao crossed her arms before her chest and said in a delicate voice, Not fight, beat. It made many people atop the city wall laugh loudly. This little girl looked delicate like jade, truly attracting people's affection, while some people with special fetishes began to drool. Ha 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 ha. Si Tu Yao and the others laughed loudly, while Bien Hao could no longer remain calm. I'll let you have one move, Bien Hao said. Thank you, Wunkel. Hunyao bowed in a lowly manner. Hanging around Ling Han a lot, she also learned how to trick people. Just as Bien Hao was about to nod, a blur flashed before his eyes as a small figure appeared before him. Pong! He felt pain on his face, and his body instantly escaped control, sitting abruptly onto the ground. Everyone looked at Hunyao with shock. This girl had looked like an adorable little princess just now, but in an instant, she unleashed her attack with such a terrifying speed, knocking Bien Hao to the ground. It was as if she wasn't the same person. This clearly wasn't some little princess, but a small devil. Cece. Hunyao snickered, revealing 2 rows of snow-white teeth, and said to Bien Hao, Wunkel, what happened to you? Not feeling well. Bien Hao truly wanted to die at this moment, finally understanding that Bai Yuan's warning wasn't without reason. This little girl was certainly vicious, and her battle prowess couldn't be measured with logic. He leapt up again and let out a battle cry. 4 corpse soldiers instantly arrived all together, attacking towards Hunyao. Ayaya, Wunkel, weren't you going to let Nyao have one move? Hunyao's figure was agile, running while yelling. Despite the attacks of 4 corpse soldiers coming from all sides, it was like she was taking a stroll, appearing extremely relaxed. Moreover, the little girl wasn't to be trifled with, either. Her small hand turned into a palm and shot toward a corpse soldier. So what if corpse soldiers were refined hundreds of times? When Hunyao was only in the spiritual pedestal tier, her claws could tear her target with the destructive power of the Flower Blossom tier's 2 stars battle prowess. Now that she advanced into the Flower Blossom tier, these claws were naturally even more terrifying. With a chi, the skeletal framework that was only slightly inferior to rare metals of the same tier was instantly torn apart with ease, shredded into shattered bone scraps in a few moves by Hunyao. Pooh! Everyone spurted out. This little girl was too freakish. How could she be so strong? Was this any weaker than Xuanyuan Ziguang? Amongst the prodigies of the middle state, another person must be added. The experienced person from before exclaimed. What? Didn't you say middle state's prodigies weren't beyond 10? The experienced person was humiliatingly proven wrong, and his face instantly flushed. Earlier, he'd said that 10 prodigies like Xuanyuan Ziguang and Zhu Tiangu couldn't be found in the entire middle state. But now? A random little girl that came out was strong to such a heaven-defying degree. After Hunyao easily took care of the 4 corpse soldiers, Bien Hao could only admit defeat. He couldn't win even with corpse soldiers, let alone without their help. Hunyao laughed loudly and said, Anyone else? Nyao wants to fight 10 alone. The side of 1,000 corpse sect involuntarily sank into silence. Although Bien Hao could only rank at number 8 or 9 in strength amongst the 10 disciples, Hunyao was too relaxed just now. Thus, to suppress this little girl, Zhu Tiangu probably had to be sent out. The problem was that Zhu Tiangu was still fighting fiercely with Xuanyuan Ziguang, and it had to wait. Bai Yuan could only say, I'll count as if you've won 9 times. For the 10th, the 3rd will fight you after this round. Want you to wait? Then I won't play. Hunyao stomped her feet in discontent and returned. Atop the city wall, everyone's gazes were filled with shock when they looked towards Hunyeo, and some older figures already wanted to take this little girl as a disciple. This little girl was so strong now. How terrifying would she become after she grew up? Amongst the elites of the world in the future, there was definitely a place for her. Chapter 564, Knocked Out by a Brick. Chapter 564, Knocked Out by a Brick. Reverie _ What are you guys staring at Hunyeo like that for? No matter how much you guys look, you guys won't get any food. Hunyeo swept everyone with a warning glance. Could these people be thinking of the food on her? They were too bad. The experienced person began to judge again and concluded, middle states geniuses, adding this little girl should be all. He seemed to have quite the reputation, so despite being humiliatingly proven wrong once, those words still received the recognition of many people who started expressing their agreement. Not bad. Such a little girl is definitely hard to come by in 10 millennia. Too freakish, absolutely unimaginable. Ling Han listened, couldn't help but laugh, and said, Hunyeo, you go down to fight. As Hellion Sun Shui heard it, her face instantly turned pale. She hurriedly shook her head and said, I can't. I said you can, so you definitely can. Don't forget, I gave you a brick, and you can smash with that. Ling Han encouraged her. Hellion Sun Shui didn't know the differences of tears, or else if she thought she was a normal little girl, she would never dare fight with a flower blossom tear opponent. However, now that she didn't know, she was fearless, nodding ignorantly. In her mind, Ling Han was the first person she saw when she opened her eyes, so she naturally felt close to him and would listen to him. Ling Han nodded and shouted towards the bottom, We've won 90 quotas now, right? Bai Yuan nodded indifferently and said, Correct. Then let's win a bit more. Next, this big chick will battle. Ling Han pointed at Hellion Sun Shui. Instantly, everyone's gazes moved over. Then, they shook their heads simultaneously. No way. This girl didn't have a shred of origin power fluctuation. Wouldn't letting her take the field to battle just be feeding the opponent? You dare. Xuanyuan Ziguang could actually look and hear in all directions amidst a fierce battle, immediately yelling at Ling Han. Ling Han picked his ears and muttered, None of your damn business. Bai Yuan, however, stared at Hellion Sun Shui and revealed an expression of deep thought. He also couldn't see through this girl, but compared to the little girl earlier, it was completely different. Hunyeo was a deep pit like a great sea that he couldn't see the bottom of, while this girl was like she was covered by a layer of mist. Strange, too strange. Hellion Sun Shui looked at the height of the city walls and immediately said weakly, I can't go down. It's too high. I'll fall to my death. Everyone burst into laughter. You guys were definitely clowns invited by a monkey to come jest. Ling Han grabbed onto Hellion Sun Shui and brought her down the city walls. He then smiled and said, Go on. He naturally wasn't worried at all. Hellion Sun Shui's true cultivation was in the high stage of the heaven tier, and she had the bloodline of true dragon. If her battle prowess was fully unleashed, even Bai Yuan might be suppressed with a single hand. Hellion Sun Shui walked forward timidly while grabbing tightly onto a brick. Everyone couldn't help but laugh at this look. Another opponent that looked like they couldn't stand a single blow. Bai Yuan pondered and said, Fifth, you go. What? Bianhao and the others were greatly shocked. The fifth, Xiang, was third strongest elite amongst them, and he was going to be sent out now? Xiang, a dapper and handsome man. Divine light flashed across his body, looking extremely holy. He didn't appear like a 1,000-corpse sect disciple at all. He walked out and looked at Hellion Sun Shui. Then, revealing a breathtaking expression, he said, Beauty, be my Tao companion, and I will take you to the pinnacle of the world. Our rascal! Hellion Sun Shui shivered as she scolded him. So pure, I like it. He laughed loudly, leaping before her and reaching out towards Hellion Sun Shui's face. You dare! Xuanyuan Ziguang roared angrily. This was the lady he'd set his eyes on. He swore that he would definitely cut off Xiang's hand, and if Xiang really touched Hellion Sun Shui, he would break his bones into ash. Himph, fighting against me. You still have the heart to look elsewhere? Zhu Tiangu sneered and launched consecutive deadly attacks, instantly suppressing Xuanyuan Ziguang. Get lost, damn rascal! Hellion Sun Shui screamed, swinging the brick fiercely towards the other, and she actually closed her eyes and turned her head around, as if leaving it up to chance. Pong! The problem was that she actually landed the hit. Wasn't it Sha Xian's fault for being frivolous and touching her face? Face to face, once Hellion Sun Shui's brute force was mustered up, that terrifying power was such that Ling Han couldn't block it, and even Hu Niu would have to surrender. Ah! Sha Zhan screamed tragically and lay on the ground. A hole opened up on his forehead as he lay straight and still. What? Everyone's faces twitched. This girl really knocked out a flower blossom tier elite with a brick. Physical cultivator. Bai Yuan blurted 2 words out. The finally knew why he couldn't see through Hellion Sun Shuesha was a physical cultivator. Her power was condensed in every inch of her flesh and couldn't be sensed until the moment it was unleashed. So, she's a physical cultivator with shocking brute force. Yes, in close combat, physical cultivators have the absolute advantage. Haha, it's that guy's fault for being lustful, wanting to take advantage of her but ending up knocked out by a brick. Yes, if Flower Blossom tier warriors don't guard their bodies with origin power, their defense isn't much higher than normal people's. Everyone nodded one after another, thinking that Sha Xian lost truly wrong Lai really lost to his own lust. Hemph, since you're an expert, why pretend to be in such a delicate state? A girl from the 1,000 Corpse sect stepped out. She was the 9th, and her name was Han Gu Yun. Although the 7th was defeated, it wasn't because Sha Xian's strength fell short. She was also remarkably beautiful, but was far inferior compared to Hellion Sun Shui. It couldn't be helped. Even if their looks were on the same level, Hellion Sun Shui was a genuine heaven-tier elite. After all, how could a flower blossom tier warrior possibly rival that natural temperament? Han Gu Yun immediately let out a battle cry and summoned her corpse soldiers. While she also had 4 of them, they were a little stronger than Bian Hao's corpse soldiers, at least possessing 14 stars in battle prowess. Despite it being only a difference of 1 star, on top of this amount, Bian Hao would definitely be crushed by her. Hellion Sun Shui trembled. What the hell were these skeletons? It made her scared. Pong, 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 pong. The 4 corpse soldiers came attacking noisily with monstrous viciousness. Ah! Hellion Sun Shui let out a scream, waving the brick in her hand to swat the corpse soldiers. Pa, 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 pa. The 4 corpses were instantly sent flying, losing their heads and limbs. In short, the 4 corpse soldiers were all incapacitated at once. Pooh! Everyone spurted out again. Hey! A great expert. This was too ridiculous. Sending 4 corpse soldiers flying with a few casual palms, she was even scarier than the little girl earlier. Looking at her age, she seemed just about 20 years old, so how could she be so strong? Xuanyuan Ziguang's face twitched. He'd originally thought Hellion Sun Shui was just a delicate and weak lady, but never thought that her brute force was terrifying to such a degree. The 4 corpse soldiers were instantly smashed into dregs, something he might not even be able to do. Genius. She's even more freakish than Xuanyuan Ziguang and Yao Huiyu. Chapter 565. Flaunting Strength. Chapter 565. Flaunting Strength. Reverie _ The experienced man earlier was proven wrong once again. This girl who looked somewhat klutzy and cute was clearly more terrifying than the little girl. Her battle prowess was astounding, proven by her demolishing 4 corpse soldiers in only 1 round. Amongst Middle States geniuses, there's going to be 1 more new person, he exclaimed. There won't be any more similar freaks, right? Someone interrupted. Definitely not, the man said with extreme certainty. 2 such exceptional talent emerging in one day was already a great miracle. So how could it possibly happen over and over again? Hellion Sun Shui was still in shock, and as she looked at 4 skeletons that were smacked into disarray, she couldn't help but pat her flat chest, saying curiously, "So I'm actually this remarkable?" Han Gu Yun was now in a dilemma. The strongest thing about the Thousand Corpse sect was definitely corpse soldiers, but 4 of them were smacked into dregs at the same time. If she charged up, wouldn't she just be giving up her life? However, seeing her opponent's figure, which hadn't a single bit of the aura of an expert, having just surprising brute force, if she retreated without fighting, wouldn't that be too embarrassing? Ninth, back down, Bai Yuan said. He was a heaven-tier elite with shrewd insight, and obviously saw that though Hellion Sun Shui lacked battle experience, her strength was too powerful. She only needed to battle with her instincts to win against her opponent because her level had already surpassed the Flower Blossom tier. Even if the third went up to face her, it would be useless. The first or the second had to come. We all forfeit the next few battles. Lady, you're quite good. Do you have any interest in joining our sect? Bai Yuan began to poach. This muddled and klutzy girl seemed to be easily deceived. Don't want to. Hellion Sun Shui hurriedly shook her head as she looked at the top of the city wall towards Ling Han, revealing a pitiful expression. She wanted to go back, but it was too high. Ling Han guided patiently and said, "Jump up on your own. You can do it." Hellion Sun Shui kept shaking her head and said, "It's too high. I can't jump up." She had absolutely no confidence. "If you don't try, how would you know?" Ling Han said with a smile. Hellion Sun Shui pouted and leapt with all her effort. Shto, she instantly soared into the sky, not only leaping far beyond the city walls, but also far beyond it, turning into a small black dot. After a short while, pong, a ball of light suddenly exploded in the skies. Not good. She bumped into the city's large formation. Though the Great Formation is mainly for defense, ramming it on one's own accord will still trigger the Great Formation's impact. Even deity transformation tier elites would be annihilated. It's over. Pong. At this moment, a figure fell heavily downwards, plunging into the city walls. Under the powerful impact, a section of the city walls collapsed. Amidst the dust-filled air, a silhouette walked out, staggering. And who else could it be other than Hellion Sun Shui? Everyone's faces twitched involuntarily. This girl rammed into the great city-guarding formation. Just how powerful was her physique for her to be as if nothing happened? Ow, 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 ow. Hellion Sun Shui covered her head and groaned, but she was unscathed from top to bottom, leaving everyone speechless. Ling Han also came to a painful realization. No wonder he was still firmly dominated by her despite losing her memory and being unable to use origin power. This wasn't a coincidence. Rather, this girl's cultivation had reached a terrifying degree. Hellion Sun Shui was like a child who had been wronged as she walked to Ling Han's side and pulled on the hem of his clothes, looking like she was about to cry. Looking on, everyone was speechless. If anything or anyone were to cry, it would be the Thousand Corpse sect at the bottom and the great city-guarding formation in the sky. Ling Han looked down and said to Bai Yuan, "Now, we have 190 quotas, right?" "Right." Bai Yuan nodded, looking somewhat displeased. He absolutely never would have thought. He originally wanted to toughen these 10 youngsters so as to avoid them being too proud and arrogant, but now it seemed like they were struck quite hard mentally. Xuanyuan Ziguang was all right, at least being rivaled by Zhu Tiangu, but the following appearance of Hun Yo and Hellion Sun Shui absolutely just trampled on their confidence. A 6 to 7-year-old little girl and a brute force freak. Battling at the same age, they were absolutely invincible beings. Now, the Thousand Corpse sect was pressed for a win to boost their morale and increase the confidence of these 9 youngsters. Ling Han leapt down from atop the city wall and said, "Then I'll be you guys' opponent, and earn a few more quotas to leave the city." Where did this youngster's confidence come from? Bai Yuan smiled grimly. Xuanyuan Ziguang was in the 9th layer of the Flower Blossom tier, which was rarely seen at this age segment. Moreover, he cultivated 22 flashes of qi, having terrifying strength. He couldn't see through Hun Yo and Hellion Xuanyuan, and those he was unable to see through were obviously out of the ordinary. But Ling Han? 2nd layer of the Flower Blossom tier, obvious at a glance. Even if this boy could surpass 10 stars battle prowess, he would only have 20 stars battle prowess, and about half of the people here could crush him. Alright, This boy could be used to boost their morale. Bai Yuan nodded and said, "Fourth, you go." The fourth, Tian Xiaoning, ranked second in strength amongst the 10 people. He was at the 8th layer of the Flower Blossom tier, and the amount of corpse soldiers he could control also reached 5. He was not much inferior to Zhu Tiangu. Directly letting Tian Xiaoning take the field was a plan to acquire an overwhelming victory to boost morale. Tian Xiaoning walked out in large strides. He was nearly 30 years old, tall and sturdy, yet naturally bald. His forehead was glossy and didn't even grow any eyebrows. His entire face gave people an extremely strange feeling. Seeing this, Ling Han couldn't help but smile and say, "Cultivating to the point of balding, your lordship is extraordinary as expected." The corner of Tian Xiaoning's mouth twitched involuntarily as he said, "Shoot your mouth off like that and ridicule carelessly more. This is only attracting disaster for your own life." "Oh, you want to take my life?" Ling Han said with a smile. "Just from your words just now, you should die." Tian Xiaoning said coldly. "You truly have no sense of humor. Did you break your brain cultivating?" Ling Han said with a smile. "Impudence." Tian Xiaoning attacked with his palm, swatting at Ling Han. Black-colored corpse Qi turned into a skeleton, biting towards Ling Han. Ling Han flicked casually with his fingers, and this skeleton instantly burst into pieces. He smiled slightly and said, "Better summon the corpse soldiers. Your bit of strength truly isn't enough." Pooh. Looking on, quite a few people spurted out. Although they only exchanged one move, and both parties didn't use their full strength, Tian Xiaoning was in the 8th layer of the Flower Blossom tier. To be able to neutralize his attack casually like that, Ling Han's strength was not to be underestimated. Tian Xiaoning looked coldly at Ling Han. After a short while, he finally said, "Since you want to be tortured, then I'll help you." He let out a battle cry, and instantly, a long sound went off as 5 caskets slid over, and out jumped 5 corpse soldiers. "There are actually 5 corpse soldiers," an old fogey cried out. "The difference of a single corpse, the strength difference is worlds apart. Now, that youngster in danger." Chapter 566, Bone Sword. Chapter 566, Bone Sword. Reverie _ Ling Han made a hooking motion with his finger and said, "Bring it on." "As you wish." Tian Xiaoning let out a battle cry and controlled the 5 corpse soldiers to attack Ling Han. When the 5 corpses pounced at Ling Han, covering his entire figure, everyone began to shake their heads. This youngster was obviously dead for sure. This wasn't the first person to die today, and wouldn't be the last, so everyone didn't take it to heart. Who would care about a person who wasn't a well-known figure? However, the scene that followed made them dumbstruck. Ling Han's figure was actually extremely slick, wandering freely within the enclosing attacks of the 5 corpse soldiers. He would block with his hand the attacks that really couldn't be dodged, and with a flicker of golden light, the corpse soldier that assaulted him would be jolted back. How's it possible? Isn't this guy only in the 2nd layer of the Flower Blossom tier? How can his strength be so terrifying? Those corpse soldiers are about 14 stars in battle prowess, right? Definitely 14 stars. But this boy can parry it just by waving his hands casually. Such power is too terrifying. A genius, absolutely a genius. Definitely no inferior to Xuanyuan Ziguang and Yao Huiyu. The face of the experienced old man from earlier twitched. In a short while, 3 super geniuses ran out, slapping him fiercely on the face. He wished there was a large hole in the ground for him to worm into. "You do have some strength." Tian Xiaoning smiled grimly and joined the battle. The weapon he used was a bone sword. Judging by the shape of it, it looked like it was made from a large-sized beast's polished femur. On top of it were vein-like patterns that were definitely naturally formed. Once activated, the vein-like patterns shone and linked together, unleashing an astounding ray of light. It was as if Ling Han saw a massive beast floating on top of the blade, and the terrifying size of the beast seemed to be able to overwhelm even heaven and earth. His eyes lit up involuntarily as he said, This was refined by extracting the femur of Ba Xia, right? According to the legends, the true dragon had 9 offspring, but each one was different because they were conceived with different beasts, and each offspring only inherited part of the true dragon bloodline. Ba Xia was one of them. Its shape was like a fish, and its head was like a lion's. Yet, it grew a pair of horns, and its entire body was covered with dragon scales. Even if it only had a trace of the true dragon bloodline, the true dragon was the leader of all beasts in the world. It could be seen that its status towered above the masses, and possessing a shred of true dragon's bloodline was extremely remarkable and very hard to come by. Xuanyuan revealed an astounded look and said, "You actually recognize this sword?" He only learned of the legend of Ba Xia after being bestowed with the sword. However, the Ba Xia's bloodline was even more diluted, or else it would really be the dragon's son. It couldn't possibly be killed so easily and have its femur extracted and made into a sword. The bloodline is thinned and the vein-like patterns are mixed, nothing much to it. Ling Han made another evaluation. Instantly, Xuanyuan's nose twisted in anger. "You were shocked at first, but went on with, 'Nothing much to it?' How could he possibly accept this?" He snorted and said, "It's more than enough to kill you." He waved his sword and slashed at Ling Han. This bone sword was made from the femur of a descendant of a divine beast and refined by adding several precious ingredients. It could be called outstanding amongst 6th-tier spirit tools. With this strike, a massive phantom image of a beast surfaced immediately, pouncing towards Ling Han. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "This sword's not bad. I'm taking it." The demon birth sword couldn't be displayed randomly, so replacing it with this word wasn't a bad idea. Impudence. Xuanyuan was furious. This guy was too arrogant, actually viewing him as nothing. Ling Han carried out the demon fairy step, arriving directly before Xuanyuan and attacking with both fists repeatedly. The 5 corpse soldiers became decorations. Roaring angrily, they charged back, chasing behind Ling Han. Now, it became a head-on fight between Xuanyuan and Ling Han. The former wasn't terrified, waving his sword while 9 flashes of sword chi formed. Under the blessing of the bone sword, each flash of sword chi became a terrifying silk 2 meters long, slashing towards Ling Han. Ling Han obviously wouldn't fear it, directly brandishing his fists in counterattack. Pong, 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 pong. These flashes of sword chi were instantly demolished. Seeing this scene, everyone covered their heads and cried out. This was too inconceivable. The 9 flashes of sword chi were all set off by the bone sword, and their sharpness was equivalent to the sword's. This was the reason why everyone sought a first-class spirit tool. However, Ling Han shattered the sword chi with a single punch, and his fist actually wasn't injured at all. Was that still a body of flesh and blood? Xuanyuan was also shocked. He originally thought that Ling Han blocking with his fists head-on would cause blood to splatter across the skies, but never would he have thought not a damn thing happened. He couldn't help but doubt the bone sword in his hand. Was this truly refined from the bone of the leftover species of a divine beast? No need to doubt. This is because my fists are harder, Ling Han said, smiling. He cultivated indestructible heaven scroll, and if he truly attained the diamond tier body, his physique would definitely be tougher than a true dragon's. Now, though he was at the iron sheet tier, the opponent's bone sword was only refined from the bone of a distant descendant of the Ba Xia that couldn't be considered even a divine beast's child. So how could it possibly harm him? To threaten his 6th-tier iron sheet body, a 7th-tier spirit tool had to be used. While talking, Ling Han brandished both fists repeatedly, forcing Xuanyuan to retreat. It was very interesting. Xuanyuan retreated and Ling Han chased, while 5 corpse soldiers were behind, forcibly turning this ganging up into a one-on-one fight and chase. Haha, this youngster discovered the corpse soldier's greatest weakness. Atop the city will, someone clapped and laughed. That's right. Corpse soldiers' weakness is that they're not fast enough. After all, they're just a corpse and can't execute movement arts. However, simply unleashing their power, They are equivalent to someone in the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier, and there aren't many that can surpass them in speed. This youngster's movement art is out of the ordinary. Many things were actually easily exposed, but even if they were thoroughly clear, there might not be people able to accomplish them. None knew the weight of another's burden. If one were to personally take it up, one might only be able to groan. Xuanyuan was shocked. In this way, the 5 corpse soldiers were practically useless, and he now faced Ling Han alone. The majority of 1,000 corpse sects' battle prowess came from corpses, and if they couldn't be brought into poly, their personal strength obviously decreased greatly. He was actually quite extraordinary, having the cultivation of the 8th layer of the flower blossom tier and battle prowess reaching even 15 stars, which was enough to look down upon people of the same age. However, he encountered a freak like Ling Han, so he could only be miserable. Ancient bone patterns accumulated on Ling Han's fists. Close combat was now his forte, and as the power of physical cultivation burst forth, it was not much different from origin power. Each fist shot out like it was driving piles. Only physical cultivators could attack so quickly, and when origin power cultivators couldn't keep up in endurance, they could only put more effort on chi, replacing speed with quantity. Pong, 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 pong. With 100 consecutive punches, the bone sword in Xuanyuan's hand instantly slipped out, and Ling Han reached out to grab it. "Give it back," Xuanyuan hurriedly shouted. This was a treasure that the Lord's Sect master personally bestowed on him. Ling Han shook his head and said, "It's a waste of this spirit tool to leave it in your hands." He turned around and stared at the 5 corpse soldiers that charged over. Chapter 567, Combined Sword Chi. Chapter 567, Combined Sword Chi. Reverie _ Ling Han charged towards the 5 corpse soldiers and brandished the bone sword, carrying out Desolate Hell Sword in a purely defensive way. A circle of white light swirled, creating impenetrable defense and repelling the 5 corpse soldiers beyond the sword light. He just saw Xuanyuan Ziguang condense 22 flashes of sword chi. It wasn't a ray, yet it possessed some powers of the ray, bringing him great inspiration. Why couldn't he do it as well? Even though it was simulating a ray, he might be able to actuate the second style of the 3 styles of black origin, which had extremely terrifying destructive power. Although the limit of mysterious 3000 was firing 3000 sword lights, their destructive power terrifying, but intrinsically, this was an area of effect type ultimate move, whereas 10,000 techniques returned to 1 was the truly all-conquering one. Accumulating 3000 attacks in one sword strike, just how terrifying was this destructive power? Ling Han treated the 5 corpse soldiers as training partners. As he swung the bone sword, sword chi whirled, but was all in a mess. He was in the process of comprehending, and didn't have a clue exactly how to make it work, so it was naturally like a child waving a sword completely without coherence. However, this didn't matter. Desolate Hell Sword was a heaven-grade art known for its defensive ability, and carrying it out, his defense was impenetrable. Unless one's battle prowess suppressed Ling Han, it was difficult to overcome his purely defensive sword art. Xuanyuan bawled in anger. His entire body emitted corpse chi, which was used to stimulate the 5 corpse soldiers and make their battle prowess skyrocket in order to take down Ling Han in one go. Ling Han was immersed in his own world. The bone sword was almost moving based on his instincts. Occasionally, there would be an oversight that was caught by the corpse soldiers, but so what if they hit him? He had iron sheet body, which was hard enough to be comparable to same-tier rare metals. The fiercer and more forceful the corpse soldiers were, the more the rebound shook their bones, making them face danger of collapsing. This wasn't an illusion. Just like a stone man fighting a wooden man, even if the former sat still and let the latter attack at will, the fiercer his attacks, the easier it was for the latter to collapse. However, the difference between Ling Han and the corpse soldiers hadn't reached the same extent. Moreover, the power of impact was still genuine, and though Ling Han's physique was certainly formidable, it still made him feel somewhat unwell. Fortunately, he was only struck once or twice occasionally, and with indestructible heaven scroll circulating, The shock that penetrated his body immediately subsided. Looking at such a battle, everyone was speechless. Are they the corpse soldiers, or are you? How could you be so tough? Some people thought of how agile Ling Han was previously in battle, shaking off 5 heavy corpse soldiers and forcing Xiang to fight one-on-one. Now, he displayed terrifying strength and defense. This guy was too much of an all-rounder. His attacks transcended concept and were untraceable, and when he defended, he was firm like a mountain, extremely skilled, and almost without a single weak point. Battling in the same tier, who could rival him? Xuanyuan Ziguang? Yao Huiyu? Ling Han didn't care about everyone's astonishment. He simply treated the 5 corpse soldiers as whetstones, grinding his accumulation of sword chi. Moreover, not far away, Xuanyuan Ziguang was battling fiercely with Zhu Tiange, and he could refer to him at any time, practicing what he had just learned. This was equivalent to being imparted with knowledge on the spot. Also, Ling Han had the eye of truth. He kept observing the way Xuanyuan Ziguang combined 22 flashes of sword chi, turning it into his own comprehension. Xuanyuan couldn't possibly know that Ling Han was attempting a breakthrough, and instead assumed that Ling Han was finally suppressed by the corpse soldiers. Instinctively, he bellowed repeatedly and intensified their attacks, swearing that he would kill Ling Han on spot. Although it appeared that he had the advantage, he couldn't turn the advantage into a victory. Ling Han looked like he only had the power to hold his own, yet he was guarding safely and stably, counterattacking occasionally out of the blue. Ling Han's gaze became brighter and brighter. He suddenly laughed loudly and said, "I understand. I understand." "What do you understand?" Xiang looked at Ling Han, simply thinking this opponent's mind was somewhat abnormal, and he just shouted, "Good that you understand. Give me back my sword." "All right, here." Ling Han swung the sword, firing out a flash of sword chi. However, this flash of sword chi was extremely thick. Moreover, it was also like a wriggling snake, extremely unstable. Xiang, however, was greatly shocked. This flash of sword chi felt too terrifying, making him feel with a chill that he definitely shouldn't block it forcibly. Pa! This flash of sword chi exploded on its own as it was fired out. The shattered sword chi surged, raising a sky full of dust. Ha 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 ha. A few thousand corpse sect disciples instantly guffawed, but even more people revealed a thoughtful expression. This sword chi was unusual. He's condensing sword chi. Someone finally saw through it, crying out in surprise. Yes, he's forming a ray. Impossible, how could a ray scatter? Moreover, this was clearly a flash of sword chi, without a hint of a ray in it. I got it. This guy is imitating Xuanyuan Ziguang, combining sword chi and not fusing it into a ray. Hiss. Now, everyone was speechless. This youngster was too freakish. He obviously saw Xuanyuan Ziguang's battle, and then thought of imitating it. However, the question was such a mystical art something that could be learned just from watching for a short while? Similarly, many people had seen sword chi and saber chi, yet how many people could cultivate it? Seeing it and personally comprehending it. These were two completely different things. It failed. Ling Han shook his head but didn't look disappointed at all. This was a test, of course. Again. He struck with the sword again, and hong. A thick pillar of light, resembling sword chi shot out. However, it was still the same. Not long after the sword chi was shot out, without unleashing any power, it broke down on its own. It failed again. It's a very apparent matter. To grasp a mystical art in such a short time, could it be that easy? There's definitely a key to operating it. It can't be learned simply by watching it a few times. Atop the wall, quite a few people made cynical remarks. Ling Han was too freakish, making many people feel envious. However, some attentive people discovered that Ling Han's flash of sword chi lasted a tiny bit longer compared to the one earlier. Truly just a tiny bit, but it certainly lasted longer. Regarding this, Ling Han was obviously the clearest. He revealed a smile, waving the sword again without flagging at all, improving on his own deficiencies. 10 strikes, 20 strikes, and 30 strikes. His improvement was more and more apparent to the point where most people discovered that the time his sword chi was maintained was becoming longer and longer. Tian Xiaoning was shocked. Was he acting as Ling Han's whetstone? He roared and said, "Blood bones break." Instantly, the 5 corpse soldiers roared fiercely, letting out a beast-like shriek. A bizarre change happened to their right arms, turning them into bone spears that emitted a terrifying presence. The 5 corpse soldiers brandished their bone spears simultaneously, stabbing at Ling Han. The momentum of the spears was as if they could penetrate through any defense no matter how powerful it was. "Break!" Ling Han also shouted lightly, striking a dazzling blow with the sword. Chapter 568, 1000 Corpse Sects Crushing Defeat. Chapter 568, 1000 Corpse Sects Crushing Defeat. Reverie _ As the sword swept by, it was as if a true dragon had revived. The thick and long sword chi spread its claws, slashing towards the 5 corpse soldiers. Pong, 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 pong. The sword chi swept past, and the 5 corpses were sent flying all together as if they were 5 feathers too frail to stand a gust of wind, unable to stand even a single blow. After they landed, everyone saw clearly that there were actually spiderweb-like cracks on their bones. Hiss! Everyone gasped in astonishment. Corpse soldiers had formidable physique, but under Ling Han's sword attack, cracks actually appeared. Wasn't this too ridiculous? The sword chi was only fired out with a 6th-tier spirit tool, and even if it were stronger than the corpse soldiers, it shouldn't be powerful to such a degree. He condensed sword chi, someone said in a quavering voice. Not a sword ray, but condensed flashes of sword chi. Their power far surpassed average sword chi, but was inferior to sword rays. This was a stage where one could both retreat and advance, possessing might that surpassed chi but was not constrained by a ray. One could still continue to increase the amount of flashes of chi. A genius. A freak. Simply looking at Xuanyuan Ziguang operate it for a short while, he learned it already? My God, could there really be such a terrifying guy in the world? However, they didn't know that Ling Han had stood at the heights of the heaven tier, and in this lifetime, he'd even acquired a mystical power, the Eye of Truth, which could reach the essence of things, allowing him to clearly see how Xuanyuan Ziguang combined and used qi. Once he had the inspiration, with his martial talent and the height he'd once stood at, combining sword qi became a piece of cake. Damn it! Tian Xiaoning roared angrily and unleashed from within his body waves of corpse qi, which surged into the 5 corpse soldiers. Instantly, the cracks on their bodies healed at an extremely fast rate. This was the advantage of corpse soldiers. As long as there was an endless supply of corpse qi, they were almost undying. Else, why had Xuanyuan Ziguang not won against Zhu Tiangu despite grasping the mystic arts of combining qi and having reached 22 flashes of qi? On one side, Zhu Tiangu was certainly very strong, and on the other, it was because of the undying characteristic of corpse soldiers. Kill. Tian Xiaoning controlled the corpse soldiers again to attack at Ling Han. Ling Han, however, was unperturbed and muttered, "Sword chi combining has succeeded, but to adhere the bone patterns on it is somewhat difficult." He wanted to adhere the old vicious mongoose's bone patterns onto the sword chi. This could greatly increase the chi flash's power. However, now that the sword chi was an amalgam, adhering the bone patterns onto it was difficult. Ling Han continued to use the 5 corpse soldiers as sparring partners, continuously striking out with sword chi. As the terrifying sword attacks swept past, the 5 corpse soldiers were injured repeatedly. Even if Desolate Hell Sword was mainly defensive, the combined sword chi's power was too strong. Tian Xiaoning no longer had the energy to partake in the battle, simply unleashing corpse chi continuously to repair the corpse soldiers. Otherwise, once these corpses were shattered, it would also mean his crushing defeat. Although he was a highly ranked disciple in the 1000 Corpse Sect, corpse chi still had its limits, and he soon felt immense pressure. After countless slashes, Ling Han struck again with the sword, yet discovered that there were no corpse soldiers that came to block the sword. He was startled. Looking at Tian Xiaoning, he said, Why aren't you fight? *T. Why are you looking so ghastly, trying to scare people to death? Although Tian Xiaoning was far from being handsome and bright, he was still tall and masculine, emitting an astounding presence all over his body. But now, he actually became emaciated, so much that his skin stuck onto his bones, as if he'd starved for several months. You still want to humiliate me? Tian Xiaoning said with a quavering voice. He continuously repaired the 5 corpse soldiers and had exhausted his corpse qi, even consuming quite a bit of origin source corpse qi, so he naturally shriveled up into a skeletal monster. Haha, didn't notice, Ling Han said without any sincerity while revealing a regretful look. He still hadn't adhered the bone patterns onto the combined sword mainly because his opponent couldn't take much of a beating. Tian Xiaoning mustered up some remaining strength and leapt back to his own side. This battle was obviously a crushing defeat. Next, Ling Han said indifferently. Bai Yuan stared at Ling Han, feeling a sense of speechlessness. He'd known that there were hidden talents in the middle state, and that the current prodigies were even more likely to appear at a place like Million Treasure City. Thus, he brought 10 of the Sect Master's disciples to come here for a challenge, toughening these conceited youngsters. However, he'd still been sure on the inside that with Zhu Tiangu present, opponents would be easily suppressed no matter how strong. Now, Zhu Tiangu was obstructed, while the other disciples suffered crushing defeat. They didn't lose to one person, but they collectively lost 3 times. First losing to a small little girl, then losing to a naturally foolish girl, and then to this young man. What an unlucky year this was. There were too many prodigies. No need to fight. I'll count it as you winning 9 rounds. Wait till the 3rd fight stops, then he'll fight you, Bai Yuan said grudgingly. Ling Han cracked a smile and said to Xuanyuan Ziguang, Little Guang, can you do it or not? If you can't, leave it to me. Bullsh. T. Xuanyuan Ziguang roared angrily as divine light flashed in his eyes, and purple-colored flames were emitted from his body. Hong. His aura actually skyrocketed. Power of bloodline? Ling Han muttered. At this moment, Xuanyuan Ziguang was truly powerful, and it felt like he'd already surpassed the level of the flower blossom tier and crossed into the height of the spiritual infant tier. Within 3 moves, I'll crush you, Xuanyuan Ziguang shouted, firing both fists like hammers towards Zhu Tiangu. Pong, 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 pong. As expected, the 5 corpse soldiers weren't Xuanyuan Ziguang's match at all, exploding into pieces with a casual strike and not even having the chance to be restored. Zhu Tiangu's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly retreated toward the side of the 1,000-corpse sect, no longer daring to fight. This was natural. Spiritual infant tier elites suppressed flower blossom tier 1s, and he wasn't strong to the point where he could crush a spiritual infant tier while at a disadvantage, so he could only forfeit the battle. Zhu Tiangu was also defeated. At this point, the 1,000-corpse sect's 10 disciples were all defeated, making them all lose face. They clearly came with the light of the victorious, yet were trampled into dregs. No one could keep their heads up. Bai Yuan sighed inwardly. The eldest and the second didn't come, so it seemed like they could only swallow the defeat this time. Hanlin, dare to fight me? Xuanyuan Ziguang targeted Ling Han. Ling Han's gaze swept by as he said, "Want to fight? Then fight. Where do you come up with all this nonsense?" Ha 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 ha, though I really dislike you. I must admit, you certainly have quite the nerve. Xuanyuan Ziguang charged over, striking with his palms, and a massive fire tiger was formed. I'll let a thieving man like you know what true power is. After he activated the power of bloodline, his power skyrocketed, breaking through the level of the flower blossom tier. Condensing 22 flashes of chi again, the fire tiger could even annihilate low-stage, spiritual infant tier opponents. It was terrifyingly powerful. Ling Han obviously wouldn't counter it head-on. He was originally behind in cultivation by quite a lot. Not to mention now that the power of bloodline was activated, it was like taking a forbidden medicine as Xuanyuan Ziguang instantly became several times fiercer. He displayed the demon fairy step. Once he delayed to when the power of bloodline was exhausted, he would launch a counteroffensive. Chapter 569, Monkey's Wine. Chapter 569, Monkey's Wine. Reverie _. However, Ling Han and Xuanyuan Ziguang didn't fight in the end, as Xiang intervened and separated the two. Hee, at high noon tomorrow, you can bring people out to leave this city, Bai Yuan said, pointing at Ling Han, Helian Sun Shui, and the rest. He left right after he finished talking. They were utterly defeated, so they obviously had no more face to stay. Small Yang, why not make him stay? An old woman appeared soundlessly, supporting herself with a cane. She looked old and shaky, but taking a glance at her, one would feel a frightening impact as if one's head was about to explode, showing the old woman's terrifying strength. Sister Ma, even if we joined hands, could we defeat 7 heaven-tier corpse soldiers? Xuanyuan responded with a question. The old woman was speechless. The people of the 1,000 Corpse Sect were more terrifying the higher their tier because the higher it was, the more corpse soldiers they could control. Normal disciples could only control 1 to 2 same-tier corpse soldiers, while prodigies could easily control many. However, for one like Bai Yuan, the corpse soldiers he could control reached the shocking amount of 7. Moreover, no one knew what level the corpse soldiers were. It would be all right if they were low-stage ones, somewhat troublesome if they were medium-stage ones, and almost invincible if they were high-stage ones. If they were at the peak of the heaven tier, it would be better to request a shattering void tier elite to come. With the great city guarding formation, Bai Yuan definitely couldn't charge into the city, but he didn't need to. The 4th killing formation would only take a few more days wearing the formation down. Once it was done, Million Treasure City would become a speck of dust in history. However, weren't there still many quotas to leave the city? Ling Han acquired 90, Hunyou also acquired 90, while Helian Sun Shui acquired 100. Xuanyuan Ziguang only acquired 10. Pang Xiang Ming also acquired 10, though he gave them up. A total of 190, yet Ling Han grasped the distribution of 180 quotas. Thus, Xuanyuan stopped Ling Han and Xuanyuan Ziguang's battle in a large part due to the distribution of these quotas. Since Bai Yuan made a Dao oath, he could be believed. The key was that staying here, the only option was death, so even if it were risky, it would be worth a try. Everyone wanted a quota to get out, and Ling Han thought of something better. Auction? He didn't have a favorable impression of these so-called noble families in the city, so he would obviously take this chance to reap off them fiercely. At night, Spirit Treasures Pavilion conducted a groundbreaking auction, auctioning only one thing: the 180 quotas to leave the city. Ling Han didn't want gold and silver. He only wanted origin crystals, and it had to be 3-star origin crystals. Of course, if anyone was willing to use 4 stars, 5 stars, or 6 stars origin crystals to snap it up, Ling Han obviously wouldn't turn them down. Every quota started off at 103 stars origin crystals, and after some fierce contention, the cheapest quota reached 503 stars origin crystals. The most expensive was auctioned off at 10,700. It was the last quota, drawing the frenzied scramble for it. After giving the Spirit Treasures Pavilion a 10% commission, Ling Han still received nearly 20,000 3-stars origin crystals, making him beam with joy. After advancing into the Flower Blossom tier, his cultivation slowed down, but with this many 3-stars origin crystals, his cultivation could speed up again. Storing all the origin crystals into the Black Tower, Ling Han was in an extremely good mood, and began to drink with Zhu Xin Er and the others in a private courtyard. After drinking, he temporarily couldn't fall asleep, so he went for a walk by the lake. Helian Sun Shui obviously stuck by his side and pulled on the hem of his clothes while gripping onto that brick, looking like she would dare smack with it if Ling Han dared to shake her off. As they walked, they saw a black shadow that stood by the lakeside and held a wine gourd in hand, pouring fine wine into the lake. The rich alcoholic aroma spread, making the pores all over Ling Han's body relax and expand. This was an exceptional vintage wine, and martial artists would definitely get great benefits from drinking it. Ling Han looked reluctant to let it go to waste, and said, dear friend, such fine wine, Isn't it a pity to waste it? That person's back was against Ling Han. He turned around as he heard those words, sweeping a glance at Ling Han, but when his gaze swept by Hellion Xuanyuan, he stagnated slightly, revealing a hint of confusion in his eyes, which immediately became clear and bright. He laughed loudly and threw the wine gourd directly at Ling Han, and said, "Then I'll treat you to some wine." Ling Han took the wine gourd, and instantly, he felt a wave of amazing aroma spread, making him feel as if he were becoming an immortal. He focused his gaze and saw the golden-colored liquor, which looked like agar. He was the Grandmaster of Alchemy, and didn't lack understanding of worldly treasures. Thus, he blurted out, "Purple moon Ganoderma, thousand wind fruit, purple cloud soul essence, void flower. It's monkey's wine." Monkey's wine. According to the legends, monkeys harvested various spirit fruits and medicinal ingredients to brew fine wine. It was not only tasty and aromatic, but also quite strong and greatly tonic. Different levels of monkey beasts brewed monkey's wine with different effects, and possessing the medicinal ingredients that Ling Han listed, this was definitely brewed by the strongest of monkey beasts. Even Ling Han never had the chance to taste it in his former life. It could be said that even one drop of such a monkey's wine was extremely precious. Ling Han profited greatly tonight, but taking everything out wouldn't be enough to buy one drop of it. This was too precious. A youngster like you actually recognized the original ingredients of this monkey's wine? That person was also somewhat astounded. Under the moonlight's reflection was a man of sturdy stature who gave off the feeling of a tall mountain. Even if the skies collapsed, he would be able to prop it up. Ling Han was startled. He actually couldn't see through this middle-aged man. It was also quite normal, since this was Million Treasure City. A high-level heaven-tier elite wasn't something rare here. "Old brother, this wine is too precious. I don't dare to drink it recklessly," Ling Han said with a smile and threw the wine gourd back. That large fellow laughed loudly and said, "Since you recognize this monkey's wine, it's karma. Please." He threw the wine gourd back at Ling Han again, bold and sincere. One could see his magnanimous heart. Ling Han was no longer pretentious and said, "Then thank you." He raised his head and the liquor instantly poured out of the gourd, flowing into his mouth like a waterfall. However, after one mouthful, Ling Han felt like would pass out from being drunk. This monkey's wine was tonic and strong, affecting the divine sense directly. Even spiritual infant tier and deity transformation tier elites would easily get drunk. However, Ling Han had a shred of heaven tier divine sense, and it was toughened under the sharpening of primal chaos source rock. He didn't pass out in one mouthful, but his eyes involuntarily became unclear. After having a good mouthful, he threw the wine gourd back at the large fellow and said, "Old brother, please." That large fellow took the gourd and chugged it. He was much more kick-ass than Ling Han, drinking away half of the gourd with gudu sounds. Ling Han bared his teeth involuntarily. If he were to drink half a gourd, he would definitely die from being drunk and go straight to see the King of Hell. "Sigh, can't get drunk," that large fellow exclaimed as if he were completely fine. This show-off. Chapter 570, Becoming Sworn Brothers. Chapter 570, Becoming Sworn Brothers. Reverie _ Old brother, something on your mind? Ling Han was clearly lower in tier, but the other didn't reveal his identity, so he was happy to pretend not to know. As a former heaven tier elite and an old monster from millennia ago, he obviously didn't want to call these small guys seniors. That large fellow simply drank aggressively, revealing a heartbroken look in his eyes. "No need to say, it's definitely pain from love," Ling Han immediately said. "You can see through it?" That large fellow turned to look at him. Ling Han snickered and said, "I'm an experienced person, so how could I not have seen through it?" "Haha, then cheers again." That large fellow laughed, and as his hand swayed, he took out a wine bowl and threw it to Ling Han after filling it up. With the abilities of such a great expert, there obviously wouldn't be a drop of wine spilled. Ling Han didn't dare to chug it down. If he drank one more mouthful, he would definitely pass out, so he only took a small sip. That large fellow didn't force him either, and simply chugged down on his own. Ling Han felt pain seeing this. This truly lacked any appreciation and was a great waste. Monkey's wine was more than precious, and drinking it like that was just defiling it. Old brother, whatever matter pains the heart, talking about will make it easier to endure, Ling Han advised. That large fellow looked deeply at Ling Han and actually began to talk about it. His story was quite simple. A young man fell in love with a young woman. They met for the first time at a lakeside, falling in love at first sight. Afterwards, they traveled the world together, sweetly in love. However, maybe it was because the resentment of singles was too deep, but the young woman actually contracted an incurable disease. No matter how remarkable the young man's cultivation was, he couldn't find spiritual medicine to cure it. In the end, the young woman passed away, leaving the young man all by himself. Every year at this time, the young man would come here to reminisce about his first meeting with the girl. Countless years passed, and the young man became the middle-aged man he was now. Ling Han couldn't help but feel sympathetic and began talking about heavenly divine Phoenix Maiden. Of course, he wouldn't say that it was matters from 10 millennia ago, making slight changes. Now, the two were really resonating, seeing eye to eye. In reality, the two people's feelings were completely different, but losing their loved ones, the more they agreed. Being slightly intoxicated, the two actually became sworn brothers. Second brother, I'm Feng Po Yun. If anyone bullies you in the future, just announce your older brother's name. That large fellow said with his arm around Ling Han's shoulder. This younger brother is Ling Han. Ling Han didn't use a fake name. This large fellow felt bold and magnanimous to him, and definitely wasn't the type that placed emphasis on interests. Moreover, this person was true and forthright. He was a true man. Sigh, your older brother just can't get drunk. Feng Po Yun shook his head repeatedly, appearing extremely unfortunate. His tier was too high, and things in this world that could get him drunk were probably impossible to find. This older brother was truly eccentric. This monkey's wine was for him to get drunk, and so he entered an ancient forest to find it, fighting a great battle with terrifying monkey beasts. Nevertheless, he still couldn't get drunk. Ling Han patted his chest and said, "Older brother, don't worry. I'll definitely brew an exceptional fine wine and get you drunk for 3 years." He wasn't boasting. He entered too many historic sites in the previous life, and other than obtaining many arts and skills, he also obtained a few unconventional things such as brewing recipes. There was a type of divine brew. Its effects were nature-defying, claiming that even gods would get drunk, but the ingredients it required were ridiculously precious even he couldn't have gathered it in his previous life. In this life, he was qualified to advance into the Shattering Void tier, and naturally had hope in creating the divine brew. Ling Han was willing to call Feng Po Yun older brother because the latter was currently already 400 years old, older than Ling Han's combined age in 2 lifetimes. Calling him older brother was still suitable, and as for the 10 millennia of the soul's existence, there was no body, so he naturally wouldn't age. It didn't count. Then older brother will wait for you. Feng Po Yun laughed loudly. Although the two brothers just met not long ago, their temperaments were congenial, and the more they conversed, the more they agreed. Ling Han lived as a man twice, and stood at the top of the world in the previous life, so how could his experiences be any inferior? They talked for a long while, and Ling Han passed out in a daze at last. When he opened his eyes again, he saw a snow-white neck and a beautiful chin. It turned out his head was resting on Hellion Sun Shue's thighs. As expected, a flat chest. Otherwise, from his angle, he should see 2 mountain peaks, and it should be impossible to see her chin, let alone the neck. However, when Hainyo recovered her memories in the future and recalled this scene, Ling Han instantly felt a waterfall-like amount of cold sweat. This would probably lead to him being hunted down. Ling Han got up and instantly felt an intense headache, making him cover his head. It truly hurt like hell. Ever since cultivating, he very rarely had hangover, but this time, he was in a drunken mess. This wine was truly fierce. However, Ling Han immediately discovered that his cultivation rocketed upwards by 2 small tiers. From the flower blossom tier onwards, the increase in cultivation was directly related to martial comprehension, but he actually increased 2 small tiers while intoxicated. What did this imply? Monkey's wine was too kick-ass. Ling Han exclaimed inwardly. However, this was also because it was his first time drinking it, and so the effects were the most intense. The next time he drank it, there would definitely be benefits, but it definitely wouldn't be as fierce as this time. It should be the same as spiritual liquid drank a little at a time. Moreover, drinking like this was truly intolerable as his head was almost about to explode. Ling Han, Helian Sun Shui called out worriedly. Hainyo, not so loud, not so loud. Ling Han hurriedly gestured by pressing his hand downwards. With that shout, his head began to buzz painfully again. He took out some spiritual liquid from the Black Tower and drank few mouthfuls to sober up, then washed up with some lake water, finally feeling somewhat better. He asked, "Where's my older brother?" "He left," Helian Xuanyuan said. "But he said he'll come back in a while to resolve a predicament for you." Resolve a predicament? Could it mean being trapped in Million Treasure City? Although this older brother was fierce, what was outside was the 4th killing formation. Let's go back first. Ling Han looked at the time of day. It was already past noon, and the forces that took the quotas yesterday were probably in a crazy rush. As expected, when he arrived at the city gates, many people looked at him angrily, appearing extremely unfriendly. "Han Lin, why have you just come now?" someone reprimanded. Ling Han had an annoyed look all over his face. Covering his ears, he said, "You got a problem? What are you yelling for? Don't you know how to talk properly?" "You?" That person was a spiritual infant tier elite, but seeing that Ling Han dared to talk to him like that, he couldn't help but reveal a furious expression. "All right, don't let people make a fool of themselves," Xiang said, pointing to the bottom of the city gates. Bai Yuan had already appeared. Ling Han said, "The people who took the 180 quotas all go down." He had the Black Tower, and naturally never thought about the quotas. Moreover, he still wanted to get the innocent people out of the city. The 180 people under the city gates all looked pleasantly surprised in their renewed life. They could finally leave this hell of a place. "Old man, you've made this place murky and foul. I really don't like it," someone shouted in a deep voice. A tall figure walked from within the city, waved at Bai Yuan, and said, "Whatever Million Treasure City looked like, return it to the way it was." Chapter 571, Feng Po Yun. Chapter 571, Feng Po Yun. Reverie _ Ling Han was astounded. The man tall like a mountain was obviously the older brother Feng Po Yun, whom he had become sworn brothers with yesterday. Who's this? Such great nerve, daring to call a heaven-tier elite an old man. Don't know. Might be a stray that's been trapped too long in the city and was bewildered into going crazy. Yes, that's right, that's right. Atop the wall, everyone discussed animatedly, but not everyone had eyesight like Ling Han, being able to see Feng Po Yun's powerfulness. In the eyes of normal people, this large fellow was just slightly sturdy, slightly out of the ordinary, and didn't have many specialties. However, heaven-tier elites, in the clear and in the dark alike, all revealed a grave expression. They couldn't see through this large fellow's strength. This proved one point. The other person's cultivation was not at all below theirs. Bai Yuan was even more careful. With a battle cry, 7 caskets slid over from afar. The other person had bad intentions and would most likely attack, so he couldn't be careless at all. Normally, heaven-tier warriors were already at the world's peak, so they were naturally bold and unrestrained. However, the Thousand Corpse Sect was somewhat special. Even its shattering void-tier sect master was hidden, never showing their true self. The sect master's officers, the 7 venerable heaven-tier warriors, were naturally also cautions. At least, before the Thousand Corpse Sect stood in front of the public formally, each one of them maintained a low profile and a cautious manner. "Lordship, who are you?" Bai Yuan asked in a shout. Feng Po Yun picked his ears and said, "Do you have hearing problems?" I told you to remove this formation, or else I'll personally take it down. Haha, what an arrogant tone. Why don't you take it down for this old man to see? Bai Yuan said threateningly. This was the fourth killing formation, and although the sect master didn't acquire the complete formation, being only able to unleash 50% of its power, it wasn't difficult to erase a low-level shattering void tier cultivator. This large fellow actually said he'd take it down, hmph. Feng Po Yun's gaze focused like a sweeping flash of lightning, making Bai Yuan's eyes hurt as if they were about to explode. So powerful. Bai Yuan was shocked and hurriedly controlled the corpse soldiers to attack. Pong, pong, pong. 7 caskets opened simultaneously, and 7 corpses leapt out. Every corpse soldier only had their bones left, but these bones were golden, as if made of metal. However, on each piece of bone grew a foot-long bone spike, which gave people an extremely strange feeling. Just 7 skeletons? And you want to block me? Feng Po Yun said in disdain. Bai Yuan was furious. He received the sect master's help and refinement of those 7 corpse soldiers, and solely in terms of defense, they already reached the limit of the heaven tier. Even peak stage heaven tier elites would go through some strenuous effort to break them down. Moreover, these corpse soldiers were not any weaker when it came to attack power. After the bone spikes were refined over and over again, they could easily tear through a heaven tier warrior's defense, and once they got close, they could instantly pierce a heaven tier elite full of bloody holes. Kill. Bai Yuan pointed at Feng Po Yun. 7 corpse soldiers instantly leapt out and charged towards Feng Po Yun. Atop the city, an old woman appeared and asked Xuanyuan, "Should we help?" "I, small Yang, can't see through this person at all. His strength is unfathomably deep, so let's take a look first," Xuanyuan said, shaking his head. This lord might have seen this person somewhere. Another old man appeared and stared at Feng Po Yun, revealing a doubtful look. Ling Han couldn't help but be somewhat worried. These 7 corpse soldiers were all 3rd-tier golden-armored corpses, and were refined to the limit. Even if he recovered the strength of his former lifetime's prime, he wouldn't dare to fight them head-on. Well, if it was Sword Emperor, or Heavenly Divine Phoenix Maiden, then maybe it'd be a different story. Feng Po Yun, however, didn't care at all. He took out the wine gourd and began to take big gulps. The liquor flowed down the corner of his mouth. His beard was full of sparkling liquid, marked by vicissitudes. The corpse soldiers arrived, covering him in golden bones in an instant. It was over. Or so everyone thought. Those were 3rd-tier golden-armored corpses, and being surrounded so closely by them, heaven-tier elites would inevitably die no matter how strong they were. No one thought that such an elite would die so stupidly. Bai Yuan sneered. This was the consequence of looking down on him. Did people really think that the 1,000 Corpse sect was easy to bully because they didn't appear openly in the world? Wrong. Everyone in the 1,000 Corpse sect nurtured corpse soldiers, and each person could at least fight 1 against 2. The higher their tier, the more terrifying their battle prowess. He alone could equal 6 to 7 heaven-tier elites. How surprising was that? Wang, as the 7 corpse soldiers attacked, a flash of purple light surged, turning into a circle and then exploding fiercely. Pong, 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 pong. The 7 corpse soldiers were shocked and thrown back altogether, and their skeletal frames that were strong as peak stage heaven tiers disintegrated, turning into infinite bone splinters. The purple brilliance rippled. Feng Po Yun stood loftily like a supreme god. The ground beneath his feet and the heavens above his head, the entire world had to prostrate and tremble before him. His hair fluttered and his eyes were like the stars, as if a divine chain of order that could lock and extinguish everything. The supreme aura rippled, striking the highest of heavens and shaking the depths of hell. Only he stood supreme over all. Pa, 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 pa. Everyone knelt down. Only heaven-tier elites could barely resist, but it was still hard for them to hide the anxiety and fear in their hearts, having almost no courage to resist. Shattering void tier. Bai Yuan's face was dreadfully pale, and he looked extremely dispirited. In the 7 corpse soldiers were shreds of his divine sense, and Feng Po Yun had directly wiped them out, making him suffer a substantial injury. At this time, he had at most 30% of his battle prowess remaining. However, the Thousand Corpse sect relied mostly on corpse soldiers, and now that the 7 corpses all turned into dregs, his 30% battle prowess was in terms of his own personal battle prowess. His true battle prowess was probably not even 1/100th of what it had been. Everyone no longer had any doubts. Being able to break down 7 peak stage heaven tier corpse soldiers was something only the strongest in this world could do. The Shattering Void tier? It's an honor to see your lordship. Atop the city wall, Xuanyuan and the other heaven tier elites paid their respects one after another. Shattering Void tier. There were only so many of them in Middle State, countable by the fingers on one's hands. Feng Po Yun. Finally, someone voiced out Feng Po Yun's identity. Feng Po Yun waved his hands, appearing disinterested, and said to Bai Yuan, "Don't say that I'm bullying little kids. Remove the formation and never come to Million Treasure City again." Bai Yuan paid his respects as well. Regardless of foe or friend, Shattering Void tier elites possessed the most honorable status, standing at the peak of humanity. One step further, and they could become gods, receiving the worship of the world. However, after paying respects, he said, "Forgive this old one for not obeying. Lord Feng, taking down this city is the sect master's orders, and this old one doesn't dare to disobey." "Then where is your sect master? Let him come out. I'll beat him till he's convinced," Feng Po Yun said in an extremely domineering way. This, Bai Yuan revealed an irritated look. In his heart, the Lord Sect Master was like a god, invincible amongst men. How could the Sect Master be slighted? He said, "Lord Sect Master is held up by some trivial matters and won't be able to come see Lord Feng in near time." Chapter 572, Resolving the Formation. Chapter 572, Resolving the Formation. Reverie _ Since you can't fight me, don't blabber so much. Feng Po Yun waved his hands. "Get lost. I'm going to break the formation." Bai Yuan wouldn't possibly dare to block him. Only Feng Po Yun was slightly easier to talk to. If it were any other Shattering Void tier elite, he would have already died several hundred times. He hurriedly ran into the formation. Only inside the 4th killing formation did he have any sense of security. The 4th killing formation could kill even high-level Shattering Void tier elites, and although the formation wasn't complete, killing low-level Shattering Void tier warriors still wasn't an issue. If the Thousand Corpse sect could use the death of a Shattering Void tier elite to declare their reappearance, then it would definitely cause a stir through the word. Thinking about this, Bai Yuan couldn't help but get excited. Would he personally be the one to bring about such a miracle? Killing a Shattering Void tier elite. This was no different from killing a god. Killing a god to re-establish their sect, intimidating the entire world. Come, use your life to announce the return of the Thousand Corpse sect. Then, we'll refine your corpse into a corpse soldier, a holy corpse soldier that surpasses golden armored corpses. Feng Po Yun walked with large strides and entered the large formation with black mist swirling around him. Atop the city wall, everyone was nervous. This was truly the end of the line. They'd originally thought that they'd be trapped and die in the city, and never would have thought that a Shattering Void tier would suddenly appear. There was hope in breaking the formation. In everyone's hearts, Shattering Void tier elites were undefeatable legends, just like the existence of gods. They believed that if Feng Po Yun intervened, that large formation would definitely be broken. In a short while, terrifying divine light surged from afar and rippled over, instantly provoking the reaction of the great city-guarding formation, which started forming a shield. Even so, everyone's legs still shivered in fear and panic. This was a battle on the Shattering Void tier level, and if it weren't for the existence of the great city-guarding formation, the ripples alone could make Heaven tier warriors hack out blood, and Deity Transformation tier ones break down into pieces. The power of the humanity's peak, so powerful that it couldn't be fathomed. Hong. The terrifying battle continued. Flashes of divine light shot towards the horizon, shaking the skies. Even the void was torn apart, and a constellation of stars was shattered and fell, turning into a stream of meteors. Ling Han suddenly felt an itch inside. In the vast lands, most 10th tier rare metals were harvested from meteors. And where did these meteors come from? They obviously came from constellations of stars. However, Min's powers were limited, so how could anyone pluck stars and grab moons? There were terrifying gales that covered the skies densely, and even heaven-tier elites couldn't fly to the limit, so how could one speak of catching stars? Only shattering void-tier warriors possessed the power near humanity's limits, approaching the power limit that this realm could accommodate. Only then could one reach out to shake down the stars. Feng Po Yun battled fiercely against the fourth killing formation and shattered many stars that turned into meteors falling to the ground. Although 10th tier rare metal could not be harvested from every star, but there should be at least one or two, right? Unfortunately, the fourth killing formation still hadn't been broken through, and if he were to charge out rashly, he would definitely be crushed to death. There were many people who harbored the same idea, and their gazes were burning with desire. But firstly, the killing formation deterred them, and secondly, who dared to take a mighty shattering void tier's belongings? That would truly be getting tired of living. The divine light shone on the world, shockingly terrifying. How many people could have personally seen a battle on the shattering void tier level? Now, everyone was destined to witness it, but separated by a formation. No one could truly see clearly. They could only sense the ripples of the battle and imagine the powerfulness of the shattering void tier. After some fierce fighting, suddenly, there was no more sound. It was over? Look, the mist is starting to fade, someone cried out. As expected, the mist certainly began to disperse at a fast pace, as if sucked by an air vent. In a few breaths' time, the black mist that covered the surrounding ground and the skies disappeared completely. The fourth killing formation had been deactivated. Extremely far away, Feng Po Yun's expression was filled with loneliness. A victory that people could only dream of was not worth a mention for him. He drank a mouthful of fine wine and took large strides towards the city gates. Ling Han had to admit that this older brother had already surpassed the level of showing off, reaching new heights. So he's actually that impressive? Xuanyuan said in a quiet voice. Huh, do you know him? Zhu Xian said astoundingly. Yesterday, Han Han and I bumped into him. He and Han Han drank and became sworn brothers, Xuanyuan said. Pooh! Zhu Xian instantly spurted out. Becoming sworn brothers with a shattering void tier elite? This was truly like a fantasy. But thinking again, Ling Han was a heaven-grade alchemist, so becoming sworn brothers with a shattering void tier elite wasn't overreaching, as they were both at the peak of their respective fields. Ling Han, however, looked disgusted as his expression distorted. Han Han? When did this chick come up with a nickname for him? Everyone hurriedly came down the city walls and opened the gates, welcoming Feng Po Yun's return. Shattering void tier elites were supreme beings, and usually seeing them was as hard as climbing the skies, but this time, they actually received the help of a shattering void tier, truly unexpected. Lord Feng, in Xuanyuan, and the other heaven-tier warriors paid their respects. The others had no chance to speak, and simply knelt down in the distance. Feng Po Yun nodded and said, I owed Insan a favor. He requested a few days ago that if Million Treasure City were to encounter a crisis, I should help him resolve it. So, you guys don't need to thank me. Insan wasn't just anyone, or else how could a shattering void tier owe him a favor? He was Spirit Treasures Pavilion's great pavilion master, named Shan. Being ranked third, many that were familiar with him called him Insan too. Of course, only shattering void tier elites would dare call him Insan. Xuanyuan suddenly realized why Great Pavilion Master didn't worry about leaving with the other 7 Pavilion Masters. As it turned out, there was already a foolproof plan. With a shattering void tier elite keeping an eye out, wasn't that certain enough that nothing would go wrong? But, as to why Feng Po Yun didn't intervene earlier, leading them to assume that all was over. Well, who would dare question a shattering void tier elite? He was able to intervene, so you'd better thank the heavens. Feng Po Yun was obviously received by a few heaven-tier elites only. Others had no right to go up, but some people still wanted to cause trouble. Han Lin, return the origin crystals, someone shouted at Ling Han. That's right. We didn't use yesterday's quotas at all, so return the origin crystals. Hand over the origin crystals. Yesterday, the people who bought the 180 quotas all shouted at Ling Han. In order to save their lives, they were cut fiercely. Now that the crisis was lifted, the more they thought about it, the more they were dissatisfied about it. Moreover, Ling Han was a mere flower blossom tier, and although there was a freakish little girl by his side, she was still small, after all. The larger girl only had amazing brute force, and was at most in the spiritual infant tier. On the other side, there was a handful of deity transformation tier experts, and even heaven tier beings. Return the origin crystals. Countless people demanded of Ling Han. Chapter 573, Arrogance to Deference. Chapter 573, Arrogance to Deference. Reverie _ Ling Han shook his head and said, business is about integrity. You guys bought those quotas and used them today. No refunds. Bullsh. T. Someone immediately jumped up. A mere flower blossom tier dares to have such nerve. You tired of living? Hand over the origin crystals, and I can spare your life. Youngster, don't seek your own death because of some external possessions. Some threatened and some advised, but all of them wanted to take back the origin crystals from Ling Han. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion took away 10% of the commission. Do you guys dare demand it from them? That's your problem and has nothing to do with us, those people immediately said. No way. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion had shattering void elites keeping watch, so who would dare ask them for money? What if I don't hand it over? Ling Han said, smiling. That's not up to you. Everyone pressured him. Being able to take out such a large sum of money, they were obviously the city's noble families, with at least spiritual infant tier elites keeping watch. Deity transformation tier honest wouldn't be rare either, and even heaven tier warriors might be found. Now, it wasn't the problem of 180 people, but also the families behind them. Such a force united was enough to sweep across the North region. What could Ling Han use to block them? He couldn't block it at all. However, Ling Han was still full of smiles, absolutely unafraid, and said, you guys threaten me like this? Don't regret it afterwards. Haha, could you also set up something like the fourth killing formation? Everyone burst into laughter. Even if he could, don't we still have a mighty shattering void tier? Boy, quickly return the origin crystals. In addition, we need compensation for daring to deceive us. Hand over your arts and skills. Yes, 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 also your arts and skills. Everyone's eyes lit up. Earlier, Ling Han's display was extremely freakish. No matter the defensive ability, the movement art, or the attacks, it was all far surpassing that of a second-layer flower blossom tier. T. When did this boy become a fourth-layer flower blossom tier? In a single night, he actually improved 2 small tiers. Who could believe this? However, everyone's hearts immediately burned with desire again. This youngster had too many secrets, and if they could obtain them, it might be able to change a family's prospects. Everyone surrounded Ling Han, seething with killing intent. Helian Sun Shui hurriedly swung the brick and said, don't you guys act reckless? That person over there is Han's older brother. She was rather smart, learning to rely on someone else's power. As everyone heard her, they instantly burst into laughter. Older brother? Older your sister. How could a mere flower blossom tier be the brother of an extremely strong shattering void tier? The two were several hundred years old apart. If you don't hand it over now, I'll kill you, some people said impatiently. Oh, you guys want to do what to my brother? A voice sounded from afar. Hearing this voice, most people immediately began to shiver. However, some people simply stared at Ling Han as they didn't distinguish the voice, clamoring on. Of course we're forcing him to hand over origin crystals, arts, and skills. Such great nerve. Feng Po Yun already walked over, and the presence of the shattering void tier rumbled. With each step, divine patterns blossomed profusely like celestial flowers. Pa, pa, pa. Everyone hurriedly knelt down. Feng Po Yun walked to Ling Han's side with a smile and said, "Brother, someone trying to harm you?" Ling Han smiled faintly, turned to look at the masses, and said, "My big brother is asking if you guys are trying to harm me?" Everyone was on the verge of crying. This boy really became the brother of a shattering void tier? If they'd known, they wouldn't have dared to threaten Ling Han even with the greatest of guts. They hurriedly shook their heads one after another and said, "We wouldn't dare. We wouldn't dare." "Then why did you guys just surround me and look seething with killing intent? Don't you guys know that I've the smallest of guts and am easily scared?" Ling Han said intentionally. "You've the smallest of guts?" Quite a few people mocked him inwardly, but didn't dare to say it out loud, and hurriedly said, "We were thinking of gifting you origin crystals." Yes, 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 gifting origin crystals, the other people hurriedly said. Everyone was smart. Ling Han didn't crack down on their coercive actions and left them a way out in order to have them use money to save themselves. Ling Han smiled and said, "Big brother, they're all good people." Feng Po Yun nodded and said, "Good then. I'll break all the bones in the body of whoever dares to harm my younger brother." Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. This was a mighty shattering void tier elite's words, powerful and resonating. How could it simply be a reckless remark? Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Then send the origin crystals to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. I live there. Big brother, let's go drink." "All right." Feng Po Yun nodded and left side by side with Ling Han. Heaven tier elites didn't speak up. Even Xuanyuan and the others didn't dare to interrupt, simply watching the two leave. Contrarily, Zhu Xian, Helian Sun Shui, and Hunyou chased behind. Xuanyuan Ziguang's expression turned dark, and he clenched his fists tightly. He never would have thought that Ling Han would become sworn brothers with a shattering void tier warrior. Would he still dare to kill Ling Han? What was so special about this boy that Feng Po Yun viewed him in a favorable light? Ling Han and Feng Po Yun came to Ling Han's private quarters in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Taking out the ingredients inside the Black Tower and cooking them, the five people sat down and began eating. Hunyou feared nothing and no one, and Helian Sun Shui didn't know about the tiers of martial arts, so only Zhu Xian showed the proper respect, appearing extremely reserved. This made Feng Po Yun quite interested as he said, "This little girl is remarkable." He looked at Hunyou and revealed an astounded expression. Even a shattering void tier elite said so. Nyou's the most impressive. Hunyou was not humble at all, and even reached out with her small arm and made a flexing pose. Feng Po Yun laughed loudly and said, "Younger brother, you've got quite the luck with women, being surrounded by them." Zhu Xian immediately revealed a bashful look, but Helian Sun Shui was absolutely unaware and simply fought over food with Hunyou. She was strong, so Hunyou absolutely couldn't get the upper hand. Nyou's the most beautiful. Ling Han's Nyou's. Hunyou clung onto Ling Han and didn't consider that her small hands were covered with oil. Feng Po Yun was astonished. This little girl matured real early. He looked at Helian Sun Shui a few times and said, "Younger brother, the sea tribe's waters are deep. You'd better be careful." Ling Han was astounded and said, "Big brother, you know of this Hainyou's identity? Sea tribe's royalty, the descendant of true dragons," Feng Po Yun said casually. Shattering void tier elites were shattering void tier elites. After all, this couldn't be concealed from him as expected. Ling Han nodded and said, "This chick has lost her memories." He lowered his voice and spoke about the ancient mineshaft, including the terrifying giant silver spider. "Oh." Feng Po Yun immediately revealed a curious look and said, "Then I shall take a look." "Big brother, be absolutely careful." Ling Han had seen the great spider when it displayed its divine prowess. Just the silhouette of it almost shattered his divine sense. Chapter 574, Worries. Chapter 574, Worries. Reverie _ Ha 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 ha, younger one brother. Do you have no confidence in your big brother? Feng Po Yun laughed loudly. Ling Han shook his head and said, "How could I not have confidence in you, big brother? But I've personally witnessed the silver-colored divine spider. That's definitely a shattering void tier being, and possibly extremely high level. Feng Po Yun laughed as he nodded, and said, "Younger brother, relax. I'm already in the 7th layer of the shattering void tier." The shattering void tier was humanity's peak, so its 7th layer was the peak of peaks, almost invincible. After Ling Han was momentarily startled, he said, "Never would have thought that Big Brother was actually this strong." Although appearance couldn't represent one's true age, this Big Brother's blood and chi soared through the sky, so he was apparently still in his prime. Thus, when he charged into the 9th layer of the shattering void tier, he should still be able to maintain the vigorous blood and chi he had now, enough to break through the void. Otherwise, breaking open the void when one was old and decrepit, and chi and blood was unable to keep up, it wouldn't be a rare thing to die during the process of breaking open the void. Such legends existed since the ancient times. Feng Po Yun nodded and said, "Younger brother, your battle prowess is exceptional, and your martial talent is also amazing, advancing into the flower blossom tier at merely 20 years of age. Even I was far from as good back then. In the future, it wouldn't be difficult for you to advance into the shattering void tier." However, he paused momentarily, looking stern. "I always have an unknown fear that if I broke open the void, there would be terrifying consequences." Ling Han was puzzled and said, "Big brother, don't you have to be the 9th layer of the shattering void tier to shatter the void?" Feng Po Yun nodded and said, "Once one advances into the shattering void tier, one will possess the ability to break open the void. However, the higher one's tier, the less difficult it is. I've stalled in taking this step, for one in reluctance, and secondly due to the fear within me." Ling Han understood. After cultivating to an extremely high tier, one would naturally have a premonition of the future, not that one could see the future, but simply that after deciding to do something, an ill premonition would be felt. It was the same for him in the previous life. When venturing into historic sites, after making a certain decision, a vigilance would unknowingly arise within him. He would then give up and make an opposite choice. However, this wasn't omnipotent, or else he wouldn't possibly have lost his physical body from the shock of the Black Tower. Since advancing into the shattering void tier, one can cross into the God realm, and Big Brother has already reached the 7th layer of the shattering void tier. "According to reason, you should have a firm grasp," Ling Han said, puzzled. "I also can't figure it out." Feng Po Yun shook his head. "I once asked a few others, and they were like me, not daring to take that step carelessly, feeling that it was extremely likely for them to die. The few others he mentioned were definitely shattering void tier beings. However, some people clearly knew why, yet were unwilling to say." Feng Po Yun went on. "Which ones?" Ling Han was suddenly struck by a realization. Heaven Sword Sect Sword King, Cloud Phoenix Sect's Azure Phoenix Empress, Absolute Saber Sect Severing Heaven Saber, Azure Thunder Sect's Thunder Emperor, Earth Dragon Sect's Beast Snake King. Feng Po Yun counted with his fingers and said, "As I've seen, Thunder Emperor and Azure Phoenix Empress should be at the shattering void tier's completion, and according to reason, they should be in more of a rush than me, so puzzling." Certainly. Upon reaching shattering void tier's completion, unless one became a god, there was no way to advance further. Staying in the vast lands was simply waiting for death. However, entering the god realm would be different, as it meant being no longer restricted by this world's limits, possessing vast space for improvement. Ling Han nodded and said, "It certainly is strange. Younger brother, there are extremely many sea tribes elites. Among them, the shattering void tier elites number is at least several times that of men. You'd better shape up." Feng Po Yun patted Ling Han on the shoulder, speaking gravely and sincerely. Ling Han couldn't help but be gloomy. He didn't think of doing anything to Hellion Sun Shui, and this sea girl stuck to him on her own accord. This girl was a high-level heaven tier warrior, and her staying by his side was equivalent to being near a time bomb. He couldn't sit safe and still, but he had no way to get rid of her either. "I'll go see the desolate north first." Feng Po Yun got up, and with a step, he was instantly 1,000 miles out. The elites of humanity's peak were terrifying strong as expected. Ling Han stared at Hellion Sun Shui, suddenly coming up with an idea. He said, "Hainyo, Let's play a game called Make an Oath. How do we play? Hellion Xuanyuan was naive. You raise both your hands and say, no matter what happens in the future, you won't harm a single hair of mine. Ling Han began to get his inoculation. Although Feng Po Yun left, the forces that threatened Ling Han earlier didn't dare to go back on their word, sending over their compensation that night. Ling Han counted and discovered that he had 30,000 more origin crystals, and they were all 3 stars level. This was the face of a shattering void tier elite. It seemed that the 1,000 Corpse sect wouldn't return in the near time. However, setting up the 4th killing formation to completely massacre an entire city despite the risk of becoming the target of all. Just how precious was the thing the 1,000 Corpse sect sought? They absolutely wouldn't give up like this, and would definitely stage a comeback. Everyone could guess that the thing that the 1,000 Corpse sect sought was definitely a supreme treasure. So on the same night, the city became extremely bustling as everyone began playing the game of treasure hunt. The problem was that no one knew what the treasure the 1,000 Corpse sect targeted was, and even if they found it, they'd miss it unknowingly. Still, treasures stirred people's hearts, and not only did the treasure hunt game not end, it became even fiercer. Large forces didn't hesitate to purchase properties and dug down 3 feet deep to search. Ling Han was also curious, but thinking that it was a most valuable treasure for the 1,000 Corpse sect, it might not be useful for other martial artists. What did 1,000 Corpse sect want the most? First-class corpse soldier materials, or just corpses of elites, the stronger, the better. Second, corpse kithis was their power source and the corpse soldier's power supply. For a 10th tier spirit tool, the 1,000 Corpse sect would appear in public and set up the 4th killing formation. This was something that Ling Han just couldn't believe. Then, buried underneath Million Treasure City was either a large pile of shattering void tier corpses, or a hidden source of corpse chi, which could make 1,000 Corpse sect's overall strength increase drastically in a short time. These 2 things Ling Han had no interest in. At this time, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion's 8 Pavilion Masters and Alchemist Society's 2 Heaven-grade alchemists finally returned. Obviously, they gained nothing. Even Ling Han, the genuine alchemy emperor, didn't know where his belongings of the previous life were, let alone other people. Once they returned, the 5 Regions Spirit Treasures Pavilions contest was also brought up to schedule and wasn't cancelled because of the 1,000 Corpse sect surrounding the city. With a shattering void tier elite keeping watch, Million Treasure City could be said to be safe and stable, unless the 1,000 Corpse sect could set up the complete 4th killing formation. However, if they were able to set it up, wouldn't they have already done it, not going through the hassle of doing it twice? Temporarily, Million Treasure City returned to normal. As for when the 1,000 Corpse sect would stage a comeback, it was unclear. Ling Han cultivated diligently in seclusion. Feng Po Yun left the rest of the monkey's wine to him. Although taking it again, the benefits wouldn't be as evident, his cultivation clearly increased. More importantly, he achieved a breakthrough on the sword path. The 20th flash of sword chi was about to form. Chapter 575, Sword Heart Illuminated. Chapter 575, Sword Heart Illuminated. Reverie _ After crossing past the great threshold of 10 flashes of sword chi, Ling Han cultivated 9 more flashes smoothly, but the 20th flash of sword chi was another threshold, blocking him for a long time. Feng Po Yun was really generous to Ling Han as a sworn brother. In the monkey wine he left, he especially sealed some martial intent. When Ling Han drank it, this martial intent would also circulate throughout his body, increasing his all-around martial arts comprehension. This made Ling Han extremely shocked. Reaching the spiritual infant tier, one would be able to brand a weapon with martial intent, and with long-term nourishment, it could become a spirit tool. After advancing into the flower blossom tier, one could brand with martial intent special materials to create spirit talismans. Spiritual infant tier warriors were even more kick-ass, writing their martial intent into law decrees which could suppress the world. Of course, deity transformation and heaven tier elites could also write law decrees that were more powerful. Ling Han also wrote law decrees in the previous life. It was very convenient, intimidating enemies without personally taking the field. However, sealing martial intent into alcohol that could be taken in and made for personal use. Ling Han could only be impressed with this method. Martial artists refined origin crystals and could also leave a trace of martial intent, but it was far from being comparable to this. Feng Po Yun was a grandmaster in the way of the sword. The reason he left martial intent in monkey wine was obviously because he also saw that Ling Han was a sword user, so he specially helped him. This martial intent was extremely pure, without a shred of impurity. It was simply the supreme comprehension of the way of the sword. For Ling Han, this gift was truly priceless. 5 days ago, Ling Han kept increasing his cultivation. Monkey wine didn't increase his tier as crazily as it did the first time, but it still allowed him to reach the 6th layer of the flower blossom tier. In the following 5 days, Ling Han studied Feng Po Yun's sword path, but didn't absorb it directly, using it as reference. If absorbed directly, with Feng Po Yun's level in the way of the sword, it was enough to take the initiative, influencing Ling Han's own path into only being able to take Feng Po Yun's path. However, he'd already decided on his own path, so he obviously had to jump out of this loop. The good qualities of others could serve to polish one's own qualities. Feng Po Yun cultivated sentimental sword, extreme in affection. He loved only one person in his entire life, and even after the other person's death, his feelings didn't change and his obsession didn't wane. Honestly, Ling Han couldn't comprehend such sword intent anyway. It was true that he loved Heavenly Divine Phoenix Maiden, but he definitely couldn't be as besotted as Feng Po Yun. He only extracted Feng Po Yun's comprehension in the way of the sword. After all, this was what Feng Po Yun gained in several hundred years of diligent cultivation, and at the heights of the Shattering Void tier, it already surpassed the level of Sword Chi and Sword Ray, reaching Sword Heart. Sword Heart Illumination. Even with a stalk of grass in hand, one could strike down the stars. Feng Po Yun's Sword Heart shined within Ling Han's consciousness. Ling Han used Feng Po Yun's Sword Heart to illuminate his own, increasing comprehension on the sword path to form Sword Chi. After 5 days, Ling Han flicked his right hand, and shwa, 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 19 flashes of Sword Chi swept out, while the 20th flash moved indistinctly at his fingertips, hidden and not unleashed. It had sprouted. Ling Han continuously moved his fingers, and the 20th flash of Sword Chi became thicker and thicker, soon forming. The 20th flash of Sword Chi is a threshold, and after crossing over it, the power at least doubled. Ling Han nodded. Previously, when he felt immense pressure fighting against Xuanyuan Ziguang, it was mainly because the opponent grasped Sword Chi that surpassed 20 flashes, achieving a qualitative change. Now, fighting against that guy, I have 50% chance of winning. It can't be helped that I can't use Mysterious 3000. The strongest art can't be used, or else I could decide the outcome in one move. While there's still time, I'll continue to cultivate Sword Chi. Since I've crossed the great threshold of 20 flashes, I should be able to cultivate several more flashes in a short amount of time. Feng Po Yun's Sword Heart's aura was still present, so Ling Han obviously wouldn't waste it. This was an extremely rare chance. Even Feng Po Yun might not be able to do this that many times. Severing one's own sword heart to give part of it to others was a type of injury to oneself. Ling Han exclaimed that this big brother was truly a sentimental personal. Just because they became sworn brothers, he generously gave him such an opportunity. He had to reciprocate this well in the future. After 3 more days, Feng Po Yun's sword heart finally disappeared. Ling Han stopped and waved his right hand. 23 flashes of Sword Chi flashed by, terrifyingly shocking. How unfortunate. With a month more, I would push Sword Chi to the limit of 29 flashes. But, is 29 flashes truly the limit? Ling Han didn't know. This was something that he would know only after he personally advanced into that level. The so-called limits were made to be broken. For some people, 10 flashes was the limit, and for others, 20 flashes was the limit. He exited. Zhu Xian greeted him and said, "Brother Han, you finally came out of seclusion. Sister Hong's almost worried sick. The contest starts the day after tomorrow." Ling Han laughed and said, "Let her worry. I still haven't taken appearance fees from her." "Oh, right. Zhu Xian took out a few head-sized rocks from a spatial ring. The colors of the rocks varied. There were black ones, yellowish-brown ones, and purple ones. These are the star fragments that Big Brother struck down after the people in the city picked them up. They didn't dare to keep any themselves, giving it to Brother Han to deal with. Fallen star metal. Ling Han exulted and examined a few of the meteorites, revealing a smile. He said, blood rainbow iron, dragon's tooth gold, crimson cloud bronze stone. Haha, all are 7th tier rare metals. Unfortunately, there isn't even an 8th tier one. Haha, well, can't be too greedy. 7th tier rare metal is already not bad. Ling Han said to Zhu Xian, you should change your sword. This is 7th tier rare metal. Nourish it daily and brand it with your own martial intent, and it'll become a 7th tier spirit tool in the future. Thank you, Brother Han. Zhu Xian said softly, exuding tenderness and love at Ling Han and looking like she would let him do as he pleased. Don't seduce your brother. My will is quite firm. Ling Han pinched her smooth, jade-like chin and then brought her into the Black Tower. He was going to refine those star metals into weapons. These could only be called iron ore. From purifying to burnishing and refinement, it wouldn't be completed without around half a year's time, even if given to the most remarkable ironsmith. However, inside the Black Tower, everything became extremely simple. Ling Han was like a god, unleashing 10th tier divine fire and easily melting these ores, ridding them of impurities. In only half a day, the ores were thoroughly tempered. What shape do you like? Ling Han asked Zhu Xian. Under Zhu Xian's constant adjustments, Ling Han forged a precious sword with a thin but extremely sharp blade. This wasn't a spirit tool yet, and needed the constant nourishment of martial intent. The level of the raw material was still there, though. Ling Han also forged one for himself, but his brute force was too terrifying now. The 100-pound sword in his hand was no different than an embroidery needle, and didn't feel heavy at all. Next, Ling Han forged a bow and 10 arrows for himself, but the bowstring still had to be found otherwise. After completing all this, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion's once in 3 years contest was finally about to start. Chapter 576, Deducing 10,000 Techniques Return to 1. Chapter 576, Deducing 10,000 Techniques Return to 1. Reverie _ Ling Han found Yin Hong and told her that he would not only attend the alchemy contest, but also take part in the martial arts contest. Already anticipated it, this old lady already reported your name, Yin Hong said unreservedly. You acted first, then reported later? Wouldn't you fear that I'm naturally loving of peace and never fight and kill? Ling Han said with a smile. Pa, you look like the bellicose type at first glance, especially when encountering geniuses of the same age range. You probably dream of trampling them, let alone Xuanyuan Ziguang, who has intentions about your wife. Yin Hong gave him a harsh look. That Hainyo really isn't my wife. Ling Han sighed. Not your wife? Then why does she stick to you so tightly? Yin Hong obviously didn't believe him, and winked at the woman who was grabbing onto the hem of his clothes while holding onto a brick with the other hand. Ling Han sighed again. Helian Shui stuck to him now, and was even stickier than Hunyeo. At least Hunyeo could be coaxed with food, but this Hainyo was obviously not a chowhound. I get it. Newlyweds, lovey-dovey. Yin Hong looked like she understood clearly. I won't bother you guys doing your thing. Remember, tomorrow at noon is the alchemy contest. Don't exhaust too much of your spirit that you won't even be able to refine pills when the time comes. Female rascal, Ling Han said powerlessly. For the Alchemy Emperor, an alchemy contest was obviously a piece of cake and wasn't something to worry about. For now, Ling Han still put his energy on martial arts. He wanted to adhere the bone patterns on the combined sword chi. The old vicious mongoose's bone patterns were truly incredible, being able to increase destructive power by 1 to 2-fold. With the power of Ling Han's current 23 flashes of combined sword chi, if the bone patterns could be adhered onto them, well, even if it couldn't be compared to Sword Ray, it wouldn't be far from it. If the bone patterns could be adhered onto it, Ling Han would have the confidence to take down Xuanyuan Ziguang. Otherwise, it would be a 50-50 chance. Additionally, since I've combined Sword Chi, it could be called a pseudo-ray. Maybe I can try using 10,000 techniques return to 1. On the basis of mysterious 3,000, combining 3,000 attacks into 1. Such an attack, even if I advance into the spiritual infant tier and my physique is comparable to same tier rare metal, it can still be slashed through as long as the weapon is gelivable one enough. Against the Heaven's Sword Sect, I certainly must be more careful. These ancient sects stood erect possibly no less than 20,000 years ago, possessing countless precious tools, with no shortage of the 9th tier and 10th tier ones. If they fired 10,000 techniques return to 1 at me, then that wouldn't be a joke anymore. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han deduced the 10,000 techniques return to 1. It couldn't be activated at all relying on normal Sword Chi, but after cultivating Sword Ray, the obscure and hard-to-understand sword secrets became smooth and simple. However, Ling Han formed a pseudo-ray, so he still deduced it slowly. As the sword swirled, the Sword Chi was extremely unstable. He named this new sword Purple Bale Sword, because it was forged from purplish gold dragon pattern metal. In terms of its current power, it actually still couldn't be compared to the Bone Sword. It was just slightly sharper and slightly more durable. It couldn't be helped. The Bone Sword was a genuine 6th-tier spirit tool with a Ba Xia's martial intent, and with a swing of the sword, the terrifying pressure was like a mountain. However, the Purple Bale Sword won in potential. As long as Ling Han continued to nourish it with his own martial intent, it would definitely become a spirit tool given enough time. However, this at least needs a dozen to 20 years, and at that time, I would definitely have advanced into the Heaven tier, and this sword wouldn't be of much use to me. Sigh, the increase in tier is too fast in this life. Getting a good weapon, I actually can't nourish it into a spirit tool before having to change it, such hardship. Though he complained, Ling Han's smile was extremely bright. Who didn't want their cultivation progression to soar? It'd be best if I can get a divine metal to settle the matter in one go, refining my personal spirit tool from it. Unfortunately, divine metals only exist in legends. If a piece appeared, even shattering void tier elites would fight desperately for it, and I really wouldn't qualify to contest. Whatever, I should just keep my mind on sword training. In a night, Ling Han acquired only slight improvement on 10,000 techniques return to 1, but received quite the inspiration in the adherence of bone patterns. If he had one more day, he should be able to achieve substantive progress. However, the day was already bright, and soon, it would be noon. Ling Han exited the Black Tower, and after eating casually, he went to the alchemy contest with Zhu Xian and the other 2 girls. East, South, West, and North, the 4 regions Spirit Treasure's Pavilion subbranches. In addition to its headquarters in Middle State, over 100 people gathered at once. Such a contest not only concerned the glory of each subbranch or the headquarters, it also had substantive meaning. Yin Hong and the others were future candidates for the Spirit Treasure's Pavilion's Pavilion Masters. Their current performance would be scored, influencing whether they could become candidate Pavilion Masters. For this reason, Yin Hong and the others set their hearts on this matter the way they did. In addition to Yin Hong, there were 4 others forming the framework of the younger generation. Yin Haoqi, Yin Jiming, Yin Lu, Yin Ximiao. Their performance was to be observed for 20 years, after which one of them would be chosen as the candidate Pavilion Master. Then they would continue to select 5 Yin family's youngsters who would undergo the examination, choosing a Pavilion Master candidate among them. Amongst the current 9 Pavilion Masters, should any die from old age or an accident, he would have his position inherited by the candidate Pavilion Master. 1 radish, 1 hole. Many people were lining up to rise to the position. Each sub-pavilion announced their candidate that would partake in the alchemy contest. They were all able to invite amazing alchemy geniuses, and the one with the highest title was a low-level Earth-grade alchemist at a mere 29 years old, extremely amazing. This person was called Xuanyuan and was from the South region. Meanwhile, the other 3 regions invited alchemists that were all high-level yellow grade. Being able to reach high-level yellow grade before 30 years old, it was already a very impressive thing. This was also related to the environment. The environment became better, and with more spirit grass, it increased the amount of times alchemy masters could refine high-level medicinal pills. Refining pills was about how much one attempted concocting and how much one learnt from their failures before achieving success. For example, let's consider failing 99 times before success. With the environment in Ling Han's former lifetime, it might take 99 years to procure the necessary amount of ingredients. However, now, 30 to 50 years was enough, so the situation was obviously incomparable. Therefore, no matter whether it was martial arts geniuses or alchemy eccentrics, they jumped out one by one like they weren't anything special at all. The environment changed it was all. The alchemy contest was the one with least suspense. Once Xuanyuan's title of low-level Earth-grade alchemist was publicized, it was already equal to announcing his victory, making the other three families' alchemists lose fighting spirit. Only Yin Han was still filled with confidence. What a joke. The alchemist that she invited was a heaven-grade alchemist, all right? Chapter 577, Selecting Ingredients and Starting the Furnace. Chapter 577, Selecting Ingredients and Starting the Furnace. Reverie _ Is there still need to have a contest? Yin Lu said. Although appearing indifferent, it was clear he was arrogant at heart. In the alchemy contest, he invited a low-level Earth-grade alchemists, and in the martial arts round, he was even able to invite the freakish Xuanyuan Ziguang. Moreover, he mainly cultivated formations and had already become a 6th-tier formation master. No matter what, he should have the absolute advantage in this contest, adding it as an extremely glorious experience to his background. Why not? Yin Han crossed her arms, completely propping out her grand breasts as if complaining that others didn't know how large they were. Maybe your alchemist will be met with unexpected failure. That's right, pill refining is a meticulous task, and any carelessness could result in utter defeat. Clan Brother Li's too self-satisfied, Yin Haoqi said as well. Then let's have a contest. Under the surveillance of the elders in the clan, the alchemy contest began. Everyone in the family could actually send 3 alchemists onto the field to choose one of the best scores. Yin Lu was filled with confidence, sending only Xuanyuan. Yin Hong obviously trusted Ling Han even more, also sending 1 person. The other 3 families used all 3 quotas in fear of a mistake, adding on insurance. Furnaces exploding in pill refinement was an extremely common thing. Even Tang Zishur and Nong Bo Xin, 2 heaven-grade alchemists, couldn't guarantee a 100% pill formation rate, let alone other people. In the alchemy contest, there was only one chance, and it would be over if the furnace exploded. First was selecting the ingredients to confirm what type of pill one wanted to refine. This involved a great deal of gambling. As mentioned earlier, no alchemist dared to pat their chest and say that their pill refining would definitely succeed. Refining low-level medicinal pills was infinitely close to 100% success rate, but the higher the level of the medicinal pill is in, the closer to one's own alchemy level, the more drastic the increase of failure rate. Usually speaking, when a low-level Earth-grade alchemist refined low-level Earth-grade medicinal pills, the success rate was about 30%, which equaled refining 3 furnaces worth of pills and succeeding only once. Therefore, if Xuanyuan chose to refine a low-level Earth-grade medicinal pill and succeeded, then the other alchemists could only admit defeat. But what if he failed? The rate of failure was up to 60%, and once he failed, then that was just crap. So, choosing what medicinal pill to refine was not only based on one's alchemy level, but also on what the opponents chose. In this moment, 10 alchemists paced before the medicine cabinet and loaded many ingredients into their medicine baskets. However, only they knew in their hearts whether they were refining the related medicinal pills or whether it was just a smokescreen. This was a process of fighting a battle of wits and strength. Only Ling Han didn't care at all and just chose the ingredients that were going to be refined. Unfortunately, inside the medicine cabinet, there was actually no single heaven-grade ingredient. It was reasonable. Heaven-grade ingredients were too precious, so how could any be taken out? As everyone knew, there was only 3 heaven-grade alchemists now. If Spirit Treasure's Pavilion took out heaven-grade medicinal ingredients out now, what use would it be but to be wasted? They were merchants, not fools. Whatever, then high-level heaven grade it'd be. Ling Han casually selected the ingredients and didn't bother to pay attention to others. Pill refining was just going through the motions for him. His goal was on the martial arts contest 6 days after the battle against Xuanyuan Ziguang to see who was the strongest amongst the younger generations. He returned to his position and immediately started the furnace for pill refining. Is this guy an idiot, starting to refining now? There are clearly 3 days, and the first day is definitely a battle of wits to pressure the opponents. Best to get the opponents to make a mistake by choosing high-difficulty medicinal pills, then the chances of the furnace exploding would be higher. Looks like North Region doesn't want to win. Last time, they were at the bottom, and probably will be no different this time either. The first this time is probably South Region. Low-level Earth-grade alchemist has an extremely great mental advantage. If he chooses to refine a high-level yellow-grade medicinal pill, not only will his success rate increase greatly, but it'll also force the others to choose to refine high-level yellow-grade medicinal pills. The possibility of the opponent's furnaces exploding will be extremely high. Yes, Xuanyuan Ziguang was also roped in by South Region. In the martial arts contest, he should firmly obtain the first place. Ainli's ability in formations is also impressive. Even if he doesn't get first, he'll be second easily. 2 first places and a second place. That's definitely the first place this time. The elders of Spirit Treasure's pavilion commented one after another, but a few people revealed uncertain expressions. For example, Xuanyuan looked at Ling Han. Being able to become a sworn brother with a shattering void tier elite, could he be so simple? What? That boy's handiwork is amazing. Soon, there were cries of surprise. Although the Spirit Treasure's pavilion didn't have their own alchemists, their relationship with the Alchemist Society had always been extremely good, so they were able to frequently see alchemists refine pills. Hence, even if they didn't know how to refine pills, they were able to get some sense of it. Ling Han's technique was definitely amazing, experienced, smooth, done in one go. More and more people saw it and revealed shocked expressions. This youngster was only 24 to 25 years old, so how could his techniques be so skillful? What medicinal pill is he refining? Looking at the ingredients, it seems like the 5 changes black jade pill. Isn't this a high-level Earth-grade medicinal pill? What? This guy's crazy. He's refining a high-level Earth-grade medicinal pill? The corner of Yin Hong's mouth twitched as she said inwardly, this guy not refining heaven-grade medicinal pills is already giving you guys face, or else it'd scare you guys to death. Ling Han's skillful technique, smooth and easy, involuntarily made those watching feel a sense of beauty, as if it wasn't pill refining, but a master performing an art. Too wonderful. After completing the filtering and purifying of ingredients, Ling Han began pill refining. He was already in the flower blossom tier, and no longer needed strange fires help to refine high-level Earth-grade medicinal pills. His own strength was enough. His figure moved about as he struck at the pill furnace palm after palm, and fire swirled and patterns radiated like flowers. This was drawing heaven and earth's essence within the ingredients to perfectly intertwine the medicinal powers. Phew, unbelievable. This guy's too experienced. Could there really be hope of pill formation? From the looks of it now, everything is going on effortlessly. Hiss, there's going to be another alchemy genius in the world. A 20-year-old that's already a high-level Earth-grade alchemist. It's extremely like that he'll advance into the ranks of heaven-grade. Don't you guys forget, this guy's talent in martial arts isn't bad either. Weirdo. Ling Han remained unmoved, simply focusing on pill refining. After half a day, dense mist floated above the pill furnace and turned into the appearance of mountains and rivers, fowls and beasts, and so on, extremely marvelous. The pill is about to form, everyone cried out one after another. Xuanyuan and the other alchemists even took Ling Han as a celestial. A difference in level in alchemy was the same as the difference of a large tier in martial arts. It was an absolute gap, not to mention that a high-level Earth-grade alchemist was almost at the pinnacle of alchemy, making them want to prostrate in worship. Chapter 578, Decisive Battle against Xuanyuan Ziguang. Chapter 578, Decisive battle against Xuanyuan Ziguang. Reverie _ One day later, the 5 turns black jade pill was refined. Fortunately, this was only a high-level earth-grade medicinal pill, so it wouldn't induce a pill tribulation. However, the quality was too high, still inducing the resonance of heaven and earth, with thunderclouds rolling but without producing actual thunder. Pa! Ling Han pat the furnace lid forcefully. 2, 2, 2. 3 slippery round medicinal pills flew out of the pill furnace as if they had wings and were about to run away. Starting from earth-grade medicinal pills were spiritual, and heaven-grade medicinal pills could even manifest. Normal people couldn't see through that layer of disguise. He tossed it casually and said, "Examine the pills." Examining the quality of a pill was obviously a piece of cake for the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. That was what they did. Immediately, 3 appraisers took the field, examining closely, and soon reached a conclusion. All 3 pills reached 10 stars in quality. They might be called perfect. Ling Han still held back, or else reaching 13 or 14 stars wouldn't be a problem. First, fully deserved. Xuanyuan and the others stopped choosing ingredients. What the heck would they refine for? They walked over one after another towards Ling Han and bowed in respect. Although he wasn't a heaven-grade alchemist, high-level earth-grade alchemist being able to refine a 10-star quality pill, how far from that holy door would he be? In front of such a future grandmaster, they didn't have the courage to embarrass themselves. No one would have expected the alchemy contest would end like this. Other than the North region receiving 30 points, the other 4 sub-branches didn't receive a single point at all. This meant that as long as North region received 40 points in the following 2 contests, it would be a guaranteed first, well, at least a tie for first. Ling Han stored the 5 turns black jade pill. Once refined, it belonged to the alchemist, which was something clearly explained earlier. This was also why these alchemists were willing to come, taking other people's ingredients to refine pills, yet the pills would be one's own worth it. Especially earth-grade ingredients. Those were ridiculously precious. He headed straight back and entered the Black Tower again, continuing to study the 10,000 techniques returned to 1 in the bone patterns. The alchemy contest lasted 3 days, and the formation contest also 3 days. The martial arts contest was last. Therefore, Ling Han still had 5 days' time, and had the confidence to adhere those bone patterns onto the pseudo-ray. He cultivated diligently, and 5 days later, he reappeared from within the Black Tower. Ling Han bad. Xuanyuan was very discontent. For 5 whole days, he didn't play with the cute and beautiful Nyo. Han bad. Hellion Xuanyuan also followed, and stuck her lip up very high, making one want to go up to kiss it. Amitabha, how did such a cursed thought arise? Truly sinful. Ling Han shivered and said, "How's the formation contest going?" Sister Hong only placed 3rd, receiving 10 points, Zhu Xian said, standing on the side. Ling Han nodded casually. He obviously didn't care about Yin Hong's final ranking, but since he participated in the contest, then based on his personality, he would obviously try to win with all his power. A battle against Xuanyuan Ziguang to decide who was superior. Ling Han's battle intent was like fire. Xuanyuan Ziguang was truly a young genius that carried a lot of weight, and perhaps was no inferior to those like Sword Emperor in their younger days. In the previous life, Ling Han stood at the top of martial arts, but he couldn't be called an elite all along. This life, he wanted to step on all other geniuses and ascend to the throne of the strongest. They departed and arrived at a massive sparring field. Xuanyuan Ziguang, Ming, and the other young geniuses all appeared. A few Ling Han didn't recognize, but they all emitted shocking presences and could be called a young king. "Brother Peng." Ling Han greeted Ming. Although Ming was somewhat effeminate, his personality was quite straightforward, making Ling Han have a favorable impression of him. "Brother Han." Ming didn't dare to put on airs and cupped his hands in obeisance. However, he cupped his fists with his pinkies raised, fully displaying his effeminacy. Although Ling Han and him were both at the flower blossom tier, he already heard that Ling Han refined high-level earth-grade medicinal pills a few days ago, so wouldn't that be a high-level earth-grade alchemist? This could be treated as equal to the deity transformation tier elites. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Brother Pang, after the contest is over, let's drink." "Of course, of course." Pang Xiangming hurriedly nodded in quite the effeminate manner, making Ling Han somewhat uncomfortable. This guy might really have reincarnated in the wrong body. "Get ready to begin," Xuanyuan said. The competition is arena-based, with the first in the previous term guarding the arena first, while the other 4 families can send people to take the arena. The winner guards the arena. Whichever family can guard the arena till the end will be the first in this time's contest. The previous term's first place was Middle States headquarters, so a young lady entered the center of the field, flying directly into the sky to await battle. Each family could send 3 people to battle, and obviously had to make sure of their candidates for Vanguard in general. No one would deal their strongest card out first. The previous term's second place was first to challenge the arena. A lanky man walked out, and the fight immediately began. Soon, the outcome of the battle was decided, with the challenger victorious. Next, the South region challenged the arena. Ling Han yawned in boredom. The North region was quite the powerful army this time with Ling Han, Hu Niu, and Helian Sun Shui, the 3 super experts. Ling Han feared the 2 girls would be too fierce and knock down Xuanyuan Ziguang right away, so he took the position of vanguard, soon taking the field. With his strength, if the opponent didn't deal their trump card, they wouldn't be his match. Soon, he won 8 consecutive matches, forcing the other 4 families to send out their generals. "Han Lin, I've looked forward to this moment." Xuanyuan Ziguang took the field in high spirits like a son of God. "This time, I'll trample you beneath my feet and make you taste vividly the taste of failure." "Glib talk." Ling Han picked his ears. "I'm truly beginning to doubt whether you're truly a martial artist or an opera singer." Xuanyuan Ziguang was furious. "You were the one with a freaking tongue ready at all times, not giving up until you piss people off. How could you have the nerve to talk about him?" In battles between geniuses, attacking the mind was an important segment. So, he immediately pushed down the fury as he didn't want to lose control now, giving Ling Han any chances. "The strong speak with their fists," he said coldly. "Then why do you blabber so much nonsense?" Ling Han sneered. "Why aren't you attacking yet?" Xuanyuan Ziguang stared at Ling Han with killing intent in his gaze and said, "For the sake of Lord Feng, I will hold back and not beat you up too miserably." "Huh." Ling Han shrugged and attacked right away. "Don't overestimate yourself." 6th layer of the Flower Blossom tier. Xuanyuan Ziguang groaned. In a few days, Ling Han's cultivation actually increased very quickly, making him surprised. However, he obviously wouldn't be afraid. He had the confidence to strike down anyone in the same tier, let alone when he still had the tier advantage like now. "Kill one." He raised both palms and greeted Ling Han. The 2 young kings finally fought again. This time, no one would stop them. Chapter 579, A Resplendent Battle. Chapter 579, A Resplendent Battle. Reverie _ Ling Han maneuvered both fists and shot out war elephant fists, and an astonishing 21 dragon elephants roared. This battle was bound to last an extremely long time, so Ling Han wasn't in a rush to use his fiercest sword art. Xuanyuan Ziguang was also very calm. Each palm and each style were straight and narrow, unrushed, showing his extremely fine self-cultivation in martial arts. From the look of the battle now, everyone thought they were friends of many years and were simply sparring without any anger. Although they exchanged blows 2 times, it was a simple exchange of a few moves, and both parties didn't use their trump cards. As they fought, their anger welled up, and their attacks became fiercer. Xuanyuan Ziguang's palms were like heavy axes. Each palm swinging down could shatter even mountains. Vein-like patterns intertwined and martial intent trembled as he began to unleash his power. Every palm he launched had 22 swirling flashes of qi, their power shocking. Ling Han wouldn't be outdone, either. Though his attainments in fist techniques were inferior to those in sword techniques, they also advanced into the level of 20 flashes of qi. Although he was slightly lower in tier, With the brute force brought by Nine Dragons' tyrant body art, he actually didn't lose out in power at all. Hong, Hong, Hong. The two kept exchanging blows, nothing fancy, just comparing power and martial arts comprehension, or in other words, the amount of chi and its quality. This was a tight fight. The one who was slightly weaker in strength would be the one to swallow the bitter fruit of defeat. The two were geniuses of the present age as expected. They were tied in the fight. These two people are both so powerful. Amongst the younger generation, how many people could be on an equal level with them? Probably just Yao Huiyu, Lang Yitian, and Dongling Air, only a few to count. The youngsters in this generation are really too strong, catching up to the geniuses in their prime. The viewers of the battle all commented one after another. Martial arts already entered a flourishing age, and Ling Han's generation was extremely bright as if prodigies spilled over, appearing like a gushing spring. Humph, you're still not worthy of standing by my side, Xuanyuan Ziguang said coldly, and struck with another palm as a fire lion surged out like a massive mountain, emitting a shocking presence. He combined 22 flashes of chi and unleashed them as one, possessing the power close to a ray. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, I forgot to thank you for teaching me this move. He also fired a fist, and a golden dragon elephant surfaced, likewise massive like a mountain. Examining closely, no matter whether it was the fire lion or the dragon elephant, vein-like patterns interweaved on their bodies, emitting a shocking divine light. Pong! The fire lion and the dragon elephant clashed, bursting forth with a dazzling light. It was a collision of martial intents. It turned into a divine sense impact wave, making many flower blossom tier warriors shiver as their minds were rattled under the two's martial intents. The dragon elephant was fiercer. It rolled its long trunk and actually curled up the fire lion, throwing it back towards Xuanyuan Ziguang. How's it possible? Xuanyuan Ziguang cried out. Both had combined chi, but his numbered 22 flashes. He clearly had the advantage in numbers, so why was he still inferior to Ling Han? Could it be that he was actually inferior to Ling Han when it came to the quality of chi? This was something he couldn't accept. He fired another palm, finally negating Ling Han's attack. He couldn't help but look sour as the result was beyond what he'd anticipated. No. Xuanyuan Ziguang immediately discovered that a type of special vein-like patterns intertwined around the dragon elephants, as if a divine light was enveloping them. It was precisely that vein-like pattern that made the dragon elephant's battle prowess increase substantially. Coming around this point, he instantly recovered his confidence. It wasn't that the quality of his chi was inferior to Ling Han's, but the mystical arts his opponent grasped that could compound the power of chi. I, Xuanyuan Ziguang, am definitely not weaker than anyone, he said boldly and loftily, launching fierce attacks once again. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Then today, I'll beat you till you're convinced. He activated the Eye of Truth, and the opponent's slightest flaws were enlarged in his eyes. He evaded flexibly and continued to attack fiercely. He had the iron sheet body and even cultivated the Nine Dragons' tyrant body art. So not only was his physique tough, his brute force was also amazing, most suited for close-quarters combat. If one were to be struck directly by his iron fist as the 20 flashes of chi burst forth, even spiritual infant-tier elites probably wouldn't be able to cope with it. Xuanyuan Ziguang knew that his close combat capability was formidable, so he obviously wouldn't fight hand-to-hand, hurriedly shifting his feet and pulling apart the distance between them as much as possible instead. However, under Ling Han's Eye of Truth, his flaws continued to enlarge. Each step was traceable, which allowed Ling Han to target him beforehand by calculating his path, continuously intercepting Xuanyuan Ziguang and posing a great threat to him. Xuanyuan Ziguang roared repeatedly. He had never fought with such an annoying opponent, and it almost drove him mad. You've infuriated me. Xuanyuan Ziguang's black hair stood up towards the sky, and his thick eyebrows rose. He turned his hand to unleash a long-back saber. What? He was actually a saber user. Ling Han was astounded. Seeing that Xuanyuan Ziguang was always barehanded, he'd assumed that Xuanyuan Ziguang was most skilled in palm techniques. Being able to force me to use a saber, you're not bad, Xuanyuan Ziguang said loftily. With the saber in hand, he immediately regained level-headedness, and his arrogance returned to being sky-high. What's the difference? Ling Han said smilingly. Experience for yourself. Xuanyuan Ziguang struck with the saber and Hong. 29 flashes of saber chi fired out, slashing violently towards Ling Han. 29 flashes. Ling Han's expression turned stern. He hurriedly carried out the demon fairy step, evading the saber chi shooting past him. Not only was the amount shocking, but also, this saber was at least a 7th-tier spirit tool, and the saber chi fired from it was extremely sharp. Even with Ling Han's physique equivalent to 6th-tier rare metals, Ling Han didn't dare to take it head-on. 29 flashes of saber chi. My God, how can there be such a freakish guy? I've always thought he used palms. Who would have thought he's actually a saber user, and his talents in the way of the saber is actually so terrifying. Perhaps even Absolute Saber Sect's small Saber King is inferior to him, huh? Everyone cried out, shocked by Xuanyuan Ziguang's strength and talent. This youngster concealed himself deeply. Who would have thought that he was truly skilled in saber techniques? Ling Han unleashed his purple bale sword resolutely. His right hand moved as 23 flashes of sword chi flew out. Another freak! Everyone cried out once again. Pong, pong, pong. Sword chi and saber chi clashed continuously, turning into infinite exploding fragments. This time, Xuanyuan Ziguang wasn't at a disadvantage at all. He had the absolute advantage in the amount of chi, and under the blessing of a treasured saber, his saber chi was sharper and had more destructive power. Saber slashing hell. Xuanyuan Ziguang let out a battle cry and swirled his treasured saber. 29 flashes of saber chi turned into one and formed an extremely thick saber ray, slashing towards Ling Han. Ling Han also struck with the sword. 23 flashes of sword chi, blessed with the bone patterns, united into one, going towards the saber chi. Chapter 580, Victorious. Chapter 580, Victorious. Reverie _ You usually always use palms because you encountered a bottleneck in the way of the saber. That's why you changed to cultivating palm techniques, wanting to comprehend by analogy and thus obtain a breakthrough in the way of the saber, achieving 30 flashes of saber chi, Ling Han said while fighting. That's right. Xuanyuan Ziguang didn't deny it. Everyone thinks that 29 flashes of chi is the limit, but I know that 30 flashes is the real completion. With my talents, I obviously need to reach perfection. Ling Han nodded lightly. The reason why the mysterious 3000 was 3000 and not 3100 was because it assumed that 29 flashes of chi was the limit martial artists could cultivate. However, limits were to be broken, or else how would one know what a limit really was? Lose. Xuanyuan Ziguang charged up, closing the distance with Ling Han on his own accord. Clearly, he was confident in his current strength. Of course, closing in wasn't to fight hand-to-hand with Ling Han, but to control the distance at about a meter or so, allowing saber chi to showcase its greatest power. Ling Han swung his sword in counter and laughed loudly. I complimented you twice, and you really think I'm afraid of you? Hong. A thick, long flash of sword chi erupted. This was also a combined sword chi, and it also had the addition of a bone pattern, which substantially increased its power. Like a dragon, it slashed towards Xuanyuan Ziguang. Saber breaks heaven and earth. I'm lord of the world. Xuanyuan Ziguang shouted loudly, and the saber's momentum instantly increased greatly. The baleful saber intent seemed as if it could cut open the heavens. This saber strike was very strong. Ling Han carried out desolate hell sword art, and a skyful of sword lights spread out, enveloping him tightly and forming a super strong defense. This sword art's forte was its defense to begin with. On top of Ling Han's current battle prowess, obviously not even a drop of water would trickle through. Hong. The sword and saber collided, and the martial intents also collided fiercely. This could be called the strongest battle in the level of the Flower Blossom tier. A similar Flower Blossom tier, So why is the difference in strength so great? The other people who were invited to participate in the contest cried out one after another. Comparing their strength, this difference was not just a tiny bit, they didn't even have the courage to catch up. This shocked their confidence too much. Pang Xiang clenched his fists tightly and encouraged himself on the inside. He would definitely surpass these two people, definitely. The two geniuses unleashed their radiance to their heart's content as if they were two suns shining on earth. This battle wouldn't affect their reputation no matter victory or defeat. The victor would simply shine brighter. Amongst this generation's geniuses, a figure that will surpass the millennia-old and raise the extreme might appear, shining for 10 millennia and leading martial arts, a figure of the older generation exclaimed. They advanced step by step, and when they climbed to the flower blossom tier, they were at least 60 to 70 years old. At that time, the body's functions were already on decline, and even if one advanced to the flower blossom tier and revived one's vigor, they couldn't be compared to a person who broke through at 20 to 30 years old. A martial artist's entire life was to compete against time, rushing to break through one stage after another when their qi and blood was the most vigorous. If one couldn't catch up to time, they could only be eliminated by time. Buddha's Saber Slash. Xuanyuan Ziguang unleashed another great move. As the saber slashed out, there was the image of Buddha's mercifulness and compassion for all beings accompanying it. Ling Han snorted, roaring once whenever unleashing a move. How annoying could you get? However, Xuanyuan Ziguang couldn't release a true killer move because of pressure Ling Han put on him. The latter similarly didn't have any spare strength to use the mysterious 3000. It couldn't be helped. There was no spare energy to accumulate power, since the battle was too fierce. If someone still had spare strength to unleash an ultimate move, then it proved one point the opponent wasn't strong enough, failing to prevent it. However, both parties didn't dare to spare strength, lest they were crushingly defeated without unleashing their ultimate move as they held back. Xuanyuan Ziguang frequently launched powerful moves to suppress Ling Han. This way, he could also accumulate some power for an ultimate move. Ling Han wouldn't possibly give him the chance. After guarding against a powerful move, he raised his right hand and used the Desolate Hell Sword's strongest killer move, forcibly interrupting Xuanyuan Ziguang's power accumulation. They battled fiercely, equally matched all along. The battle was at a stalemate. I'm invincible. Xuanyuan Ziguang roared angrily. The power of the bloodline activated, and endless flames rushed out from within his body. They turned into waves of raging fire and formed true dragons, true phoenixes, and other ancient divine beasts that surrounded his body, their auras shocking. His battle prowess instantly rocketed, breaking through the level of the flower blossom tier and advancing into the spiritual infant tier. Ling Han snorted and said, "I was waiting for you." He took out a medicinal pill from behind his back and threw it in his mouth. It was the 5 turns black jade pill, precisely what he had refined a few days ago. This was a high-level Earth-grade medicinal pill which allowed deity transformation tier warriors to increase by 5 stars their battle prowess and 7 stars in case of the spiritual infant tier ones. Theoretically speaking, flower blossom tier elites couldn't take it, because the increase in power was too much, it would forcefully burst their body. However, Ling Han cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll and reached the level of Iron Sheet Body, being completely capable of withstanding such medicinal power. His aura also began to rocket upwards. Theoretically, the 5 turns black jade pill could empower the flower blossom tier elites by adding roughly 10 stars of battle prowess. The condition was that one could withstand such violent medicinal power. Ling Han's battle prowess originally surpassed 15 stars, and increasing by another 10 stars of battle prowess obviously meant he advanced into the spiritual infant tier. The two great geniuses continued to exchange blows, and Ling Han had the advantage. After Xuanyuan Ziguang's power of the bloodline was activated, it could add roughly 5 stars of battle prowess, pushing him into the spiritual infant tier. However, Ling Han, whose battle prowess was originally equivalent to his, gained 10 more stars of battle prowess. This difference was an entire 5 stars of battle prowess. Of course, their battle prowess already advanced into the spiritual infant tier. 5 stars difference in the flower blossom tier placed in the spiritual infant tier would shrink abruptly to half a star, but for two geniuses matched in strength, was half a star's difference not enough to determine who was superior? An advantage didn't represent a victory, but after Ling Han had the advantage, he had the spare power to accumulate power to unleash an ultimate move. 10,000 techniques returned to 1. Ling Han condensed the 23 flashes of sword chi into a pseudo-ray, and as his sword struck out, a sword ray shot out. It was only the thickness of a finger, yet it emitted a frightening chill, slashing towards Xuanyuan Ziguang. It couldn't be dodged. Xuanyuan Ziguang immediately realized it. This sword attack already locked onto him, and it was extremely fast. It definitely couldn't be dodged. He shouted loudly, and placed the saber horizontally before his chest, doing his utmost to resist. The sword ray swept by, and Xuanyuan Ziguang was sent flying. Like a kite with a severed string, he fell heavily onto the ground, hacking out blood violently. Lowering his head for a glance, he saw the saber actually had a shallow mark. He still wanted to battle, but as he took a stride, another mouthful of blood spurted out. He slumped onto the ground, without the strength to stand. If it weren't for the extremely high level of the treasured saber in his hand, the 10,000 techniques returned to 1 would have slashed him into 2 parts. In the two great geniuses' battle, Ling Han was slightly better in the end. This isn't fair. Yinlu immediately shouted, pointed at Ling Han, and said, he took a medicinal pill, which is against the rules. Chapter 581, Sunset Bow. Chapter 581, Sunset Bow. Reverie _ Against your motherfucking sister. Yihong immediately jumped out. Yinlu, you're just a sore loser. Pa, what a man you are. Not at all open-minded. Wanna lean over here on this old lady? She pointed at her own billowy chests. Her female rascal character was already getting out of hand. Yinhong, mind your bearing. Immediately, a senior reminded.
Yes.
Yinhong then turned around, bowed slightly, and pretended to be a virtuous lady. He, however, said, martial arts contest compares individual strength. Xuanyuan Ziguang relied on his own power of the bloodline, but this guy used medicinal pills, so it's obviously not fair. Otherwise, give an element gathering tier a super origin pill wound, they be able to kill even flower blossom tier warriors? What meaning does it still have? Super origin pill, a forbidden medicine in the legends, also known transcendental pill. No matter who it was, eating 1 pill, they could immediately transcend from a mortal and advance into the flower blossom tier, or even reach the level of the spiritual infant tier. Thus, they would obviously be able to kill flower blossom tier warriors easily. After the medicine's effects disappeared, the user would also immediately die since their body couldn't withstand the power of transcendence. However, this medicinal pill only existed in legends, and had never been truly refined, let alone used. Yinlu used this as an example just to illustrate that the act of using medicinal pills was against the rules of the contest. Instantly, many people began discussing animatedly, and those nodding in agreement were not in the minority. Ling Han sneered and said, borrowing external power is certainly unfair, but don't forget. I personally refined this 5 turns black jade pill. Xuanyuan Ziguang possesses the power of bloodline, but that's because he's lucky. Can I not rely on my own efforts to make up for my own battle prowess? So reasonable. With that said, many people instantly leaned towards Ling Han. However, these people's opinions weren't important. What was important was what the few higher-ups who had the deciding power said. After a short while, Xuanyuan opened up. Since Han Ling is an alchemist himself, he can use medicinal pills. This battle, Han Lin wins. No final verdict could be announced on a man before his death. Yinhong exulted. She'd assumed that Ling Han couldn't defeat Xuanyuan Ziguang, but this guy actually gave her a great surprise. Yin Li's expression was gloomy. The contest this time wouldn't directly decide who would become the pavilion master candidate, but it still held a great deal of weight. The key was that he'd thought this was a sure victory. He'd invited Xuanyuan and Xuanyuan Ziguang, not sparing any expenses, yet they were both defeated by one person, making him unable to accept it. Exceptional at alchemy and martial arts. Was there such a freakish person in the world? There was. One appeared in the North region earlier, called Ling Han. He even embarked onto the supreme road of heaven-grade alchemist. Moreover, it was said that this person's martial arts talent wasn't bad, either, and he even entered a mystery realm to partake in seizing treasures. Wait, could there really be that many such geniuses? Han Lin, Ling Han? Reading it backwards, wasn't it the same? Inlu instantly came to a realization. Han Lin was Ling Han. Rumor had it that Ling Han received the 12 Palaces legacy and even knew the whereabouts of a divine treasure trove, so then it was understandable why he'd change his name. Dare to spoil his sport? Then you're dead too. Killing intent flashed within Inli's gaze. He decided to immediately spread the news that Han Lin was Ling Han, and as for whether his guess was right or wrong, why would it matter as long as he could get that brat killed? He no longer protested, since the elders of the pavilion already declared their decision. If he protested again, it would only damage his image and make him lose even more points. After 3 rounds of contest, In Hong obtained a total of 80 points, ranking steadily at first place. Ling Han returned to his private manor. Since he'd already helped In Hong, he was obviously going to leave to find that boundless mountain and obtain the message Xuanyuan had left there. However, he planned to delay it for a few days. It was not because the new year had arrived, but because the Spirit Treasures Pavilion was soon going to hold a once-in-a-year super auction. When the time came, there would definitely be many precious treasures taken out for auction, making Ling Han very interested. In his hands, he now grasped over 600,000 3-star origin crystals, which allowed him to spend lavishly for once. After the auction began, Ling Han realized just how poor he was. Magnates appeared out of nowhere one by one, fiercely squandering origin crystals as if those weren't origin crystals but a few rocks. Many treasures Ling Han had his eye on were auctioned off just like that, and in the end, he only won one thing. A flood dragon vein. Flood dragons had the bloodline of true dragons, and after they cultivated to the extreme, they could shed their snake body and turn into a true dragon. So, this flood dragon vein was obviously extremely precious, costing Ling Han almost all of his savings. It was also because this flood dragon vein couldn't be mixed into medicine and could only be refined into a whip-shaped spirit tool that Ling Han was able to get his hands on it with nearly 600,000 3-star origin crystals. Otherwise, it definitely wouldn't be so cheap. Ling Han obviously didn't want to make the flood dragon vein into a whip, but instead wanted to make it into a bowstring. Once the auction was over, he wrapped the flood dragon vein onto the bow's base, finally completing the creation of the bow. This was a 7th-tier rare metal matched with a flood dragon vein. Adding arrows created from the 7th-tier rare metal, its power could be unleashed at extreme distances. If spiritual infant-tier elites weren't vigilant, it would be extremely likely for them to be killed by a single arrow. Without activating origin power, the spiritual infant-tier warriors weren't much different from body-refining tier 1s in terms of defense. The attacker could condense the power onto the arrowhead's tip, yet if the defender didn't know where the attack came from, they would need to distribute origin power all over their body, or at least over a few vital points. This way, Flower Blossom tier elites breaking through the defense of the spiritual infant tier 1s wouldn't be such an impossibility. Ling Han was extremely pleased, naming this bow Sunset Bow, and the arrows were obviously Sunset Arrow. This would be his powerful killer move in the future, and coordinated with True Sight's eye, it was completely possible to carry out an ambush from hundreds of meters out. Even spiritual infant tier elites could die not knowing what happened, not even knowing who their opponent was. Ling Han, Ling Han. In Hong ran over in a rush. What, not even calling me Master Ling? Isn't it rather fast that you're burning bridges? Ling Han said, smiling. Pa, you've tricked this old lady's sister into your hands, and you still want this old lady to call you master? In Hong had contempt written all over her face. She then turned stern and said, I'll tell you a whopping news. In your mouth, the neighbor adulterer having a son would also be a whopping news. Ling Han continued to mock. Ha, whatever you want. This old lady came here with good intentions to tell you something, yet you put up such an attitude. Sigh, how truly heartrending. I'm going to ignore you. In Hong pretended to leave. Wait, since you've come, then say it, Ling Han said with a smile. You're really careless. Men who are too careless are unreliable. Say, Sister Xian, what's so good about this type of man? Why not follow this old lady? We're only missing that handle. It's not like we can't live on without that thing. In Hong said in an extremely rascally way. Zhu Xian's dainty face blushed, and she threw herself into Ling Han's embrace, not daring to look at this female rascal. Helian Sin Shui, however, was curious and asked, missing what handle? Niu wants to know too. Hu Niu also didn't want to be left out. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.